The subject of franchising in League of Legends has come up yet again, thanks to the massive viewership success of Los Ratones in LEC Versus. They have brought in hundreds of thousands of viewers, perhaps views that we haven't seen. Actually, we've seen them with, Komentos, KC, and Koi, but not for like a year, so people forgot. But there are huge viewership numbers. It is reminiscent of the peak times in LEC or many years ago in LCS when teams like TSM and CLG would compete, hundreds of thousands of live concurrent viewers. Certainly has been a shot in the arm to LEC and Western League viewership in general. And so people are saying, well, what about this franchise system? Why don't we just get rid of it? Why can't Los Ratones be in here full time? Look what it would do for the league, which, by the way, is a very stupid take. So we're going to get into why it's a very stupid take, because this is a nephew education episode. We now have people writing op-eds about why franchising should be dissolved, but it's from people.
I haven't seen that.
Oh yeah, Sheep Esports, man. But it's from people.
Oh no, I did see that.
A guy whose literal claim to fame is leaking things, including stories where, even better, I once caught him in a story where he had zero real sources. I definitely want that guy to tell me how economics.
But what's so ridiculous is that these people who are calling for this were just not here when franchising happened in 2016 and 2017, and because it was 10 years ago, shockingly now, I do figure it is time for a nephew education episode. And as I said on Twitter, be very careful about whose opinions you listen to if they weren't involved in esports business during this time period, because you won't know the reasons why franchising was set up. And you know what? We have 4 people here who were involved, including Harris, the lawyer. So listen to him, guys, who's back. He was working with a European team, H2K, at the time of franchising, so he can tell you about this process. I was involved in it because I was actually consulting in the business sense for Blizzard at the formation of the Overwatch League, which then prompted Riot to accelerate their plans for franchising, basically push them up a year. And it was a whole negotiation back and forth between the teams who were talking with Riot and the teams who were talking with Blizzard. And they were negotiating favorable terms for themselves for franchising with both entities. And I was talking to the team owners at the time, trying to figure out what was going on with the Riot side. And they were telling me all of their issues that they were having and which deals they were getting from Riot. And I knew which deals they were getting from Blizzard. So I was kind of in the middle of this whole thing and how it played out, both on the on the Blizzard side, but also knowing the Riot side as a result, and because of my relationships with these team owners. So this is all to say, this is a complex topic, and it isn't so simple as dissolve franchising. But
by the way, that's a thing worth saying at the beginning. I always make this point. I'm not pretending I know some things about this because I was a journalist and a content. No, I actually had to go and ask people who were experts in these topics, like a friend of the show, fucking Lurpis, Tommy. I have probably asked him 1 million, explain it like I'm 5 questions about these topics, or what would I even read to and find out about this specific thing with contracts, or what is the status? And half the time, by the way, when I would ask something thinking I have an idea, I'd find out I'm totally wrong, and actually that's not the way it works. And actually, for example, when you say that thing where you go, why don't they just fucking not sign people for massive contracts? And he'd explain, actually, this is how the highest bidder sets the terms of our market, etc. And basic things like that. So people this is why the Wooloo guy does irritate me, Monte, because did he go and do that? It doesn't seem like he did. What he did was he goes, I have a platform and some fame, therefore, hey, fuck it, I'll take a crack at just saying I know what I'm talking about. Whereas as far as we can tell, you haven't done any basic research into it.
Also, here's the popular opinion.
You've got to get people who are knowledgeable about it.
It's also, here's the popual opinion that will get traffic to my website. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that's part of the issue here.
Always.
But this is a complicated topic, which we are going to get into. First, though, we did have some news drop today. This might actually be a separate show, guys. We'll look into that. But basically, Riot's fighting game, 2XKO, perhaps the worst named video game of the last 10 years.
Red mind, you stopped me from saying it. Well done, Monte.
I thought it was ridiculous when it came out. This game, speaking of 10 years, has been in development for 10 years. It took them 6 years after announcement to release this game. It was then released with very few characters for a 2-character tag team fighter. And then they released it for console, I believe, a month ago. And already they have decided
it still only has 12, right?
I'm not sure how many it has right now. They added Caitlyn and Timo. But they basically have already said that they are they launched it on PC, for you guys who don't know. Then they launched it on console about a month ago. They introduced crossplay, and apparently the performance is so bad on this game that they are already firing like half of the developers on the team, which is insane.
It's remarkable, by the way. I mean, yeah, I can't even imagine. I don't know. I haven't actually played it, but I would have thought there would have been more hype around the League IP. But apparently, the League IP isn't worth what they're selling us. I don't know. So,
by the way, because they didn't create a new tutorial system for League of Legends when Arcane launched, and they were trying to hype up the League of Legends IP and universe. This is the game that needed to translate from Arcane. This is the one that was easy for anybody to enter. It's a fighting game. It's on consoles. It's on PC. It's on every platform that people play. It's in a fighting game world that hasn't had a lot of, I would say, games like this up until this point, or at least games that have significant publisher support behind their competitive circuits. Like, obviously, famously, Nintendo has tried to kill esports, at various points in time. Capcom has been a little dodgy in terms of support. It's gotten better now, obviously, but this is a game and a company that has a full backing into esports and the competitive circuit. And so for it to just die like this, I mean, what is crazy is that the numbers must be really bad for a month into a console release for them to have this level of confidence to just kill half of the dev team.
Well, I mean, it's like Harris says, they have told us that they have this unbelievably strong intellectual property that can be plugged into anything, comics, animated series, board games, which I might even go so far as to say Mechs versus Minions might be their most successful spin-off. Because if you look at the fucking card game, like TFT, kind of the Auto Battler.
Well, Riftbound apparently is doing well. Their new game.
Yeah, Riftbound. They say, the Riftbound, that's the physical card game, right? You got TFT. Like, really, it's just none of these things are setting the world on fire. You consider Deadlock a completely new intellectual property that Valve have just made. Is now in the top 5 games played on Steam as of today. And you think about where all these League of Legends spin-offs are, you don't have a cohesive lore. Too many fucking heroes. I'm going to say it again. Too many champions or whatever the fuck they call them. And
Richard, the game is called League of Legends. So the character that you play is a legend.
Where are the legends?
No, I'm sorry. It's a champion. It's called League of Legends. Don't get confused. It's called League of Legends, but you play champions. I know that's.
Where are the legends? I like the lore on this game. It's just at any time they're in a scandal, they just retcon the fucking lore to be part of the current thing. So Mark Merrill can dodge another bullet, and he's a TV producer now. It's like what do they want?
You know what I'm waiting for? Honestly, what I was really waiting for a couple years back, and I don't even know if it's ever coming, but I'm a huge MMO fan. Like I've played too much.
Oh, and he's cock teased that open world MMO for a long time.
So many times, but it was supposed to come out next year or something a couple years ago. Now it's pushed 2030 or something like that. So who knows if we'll ever actually see this game? But I'll be honest with you, it would be something else to spend over a decade making this game and then a month after it releases, they just kill the whole freaking thing.
This is what I'm saying.
That's what we're talking about, though, right?
But bro, this happens all the time in game development. People work on an IP for years and years and years. They put it out there, and it's like they don't do any focus group testing or anything, and it just dies on the vine. We've seen a lot of that. I mean, we've got one at the moment with what's it called? High Guard or whatever, right? Like with the Jeff Keighley fucking situation.
I'll be honest. Yeah. I think it's just that these devs and these AAA devs and these massive companies like Tencent, they get a little bit full of themselves, they get a little bit fat, and then they get beat by a bunch of indie game studios putting out new IP, new formats that beat the shit out of them with a quarter, not even a quarter, a minuscule budget, but they could do. I don't know if you guys have heard of Path of Exile or something like that.
Yeah, of course.
Think about that versus Diablo when Diablo 3 came out. It's like the thing blew it out of the waters and nothing studio at the time. It was terrible.
Diablo 3 didn't even work at launch. Like that was
I remember.
Era fucking 47 or whatever.
As somebody who grew up playing Diablo 1 and Diablo 2, I remember the Diablo 3 launch and being like, this game fucking sucks. It got, to be fair to Diablo 3, it did get good later on. Like, they actually fixed a lot of it, and I do enjoy Diablo 4.
A decade later.
How sick are you of fucking AAA game studios fixing it in post? You know,
very
like
sick,
No
because I
Man's
bought that
fucking
game
Sky.
and was let down.
Pay us a pre-order fee here, guys.
Yeah,
Pay us a pre-order.
exactly.
We'll give you access to this game so you can beta test it for us. So a decade later, it'll be good. Meanwhile, GGG puts out a game and it's phenomenal, Path of Exile. Or actually, what I've seen a lot of these days, what I do a lot of work with is UGC devs, like in Roblox and Fortnite, putting out incredible games by themselves. And they're putting out massive games by themselves, and they're beating these studios that, like, you know.
Well,
that's even the weirdest thing about Riot is their entire fucking empire is based on a game that came out super janky as a small indie studio. And by the way, it took something like 3 years to even become a massive esports game. Like, why instead they go, right, lock the craftsman in the dungeon until he has made this straw into gold. And then when he's like, please, master, I'm almost finished, they're like, actually, cancel that whole project. There is no project. And it's like, but they always leak it as well. So I just don't get why it's like, it's the opposite method. It's like it has to be totally done, and then it gets released to the world. Like, why? Especially since you're a free-to-play company anyway. What do you?
But this is this is the rewriting of the PR that Mark Merrill has done, which is that the real truth of Riot is they released a super janky game, like you're saying, Thorin, and then they iterated on it over time to make it better. What Mark Merrill said is, we're Riot. We only release things when they're super polished. It's like, that's not really how you made any money in the first place. Why are you doing it? You guys,
by the way,
you guys are the company that releases the janky game and makes it better. That's what your strength is. Do that.
Have you seen what the fucking fired people are saying? Have you been following how it all went down? Right. Obviously, it's difficult because you have to go over to Blue Sky, which is just a shithole. But they're all over there performatively pretending that's going to replace X. So if you go on Blue Sky right now, there's a user. They're on the account Pat the Flip, right? And they've literally put this out there. I don't know what Blue Ski tweets are called, and it's skied or clouds. Clouds, probably. So 10 years on 2XKO, 12 years at Riot in total, and I was laid off with 30 minutes notice.
Oh, wow.
All right, it never changed. Shit on your people. And by the way, here's the thing. When there's two types of people I'll never feel bad for when they get fired. It's journalists and it's Riot employees. You know who you work for, so who the fuck are you that you're going to get treated
if you worked for Riot for 12 years with their compensation packages, you probably made like a couple mil.
Yeah, exactly. Crying for your fucking
this is what I'm saying. It's like they paid these people for 10 years to make this for what?
Yeah.
For what?
Yeah. I know what you mean, though, Richard. They present it like they're working for a totally neutral, faceless corporation. Like, I can't believe this Checkstone's Lord Sauron chose not to share power with me.
I know. I knew Sauron was going to get dropped in the episode. It just is Riot, isn't it? It's just what they do. It's like, when I signed up to the fucking armies of Morgus Tirith or whatever the fuck it's called, I didn't expect to be treated like this.
No, these guys are like the little goblin or orc who, just because he delivers the bad message, gets killed by one of the bigger ones. You know, like not even any real reason for it. That's just what happens around there, isn't it? But they're always. I know what you mean. They're always so. But to me, though, they're fucking
to me.
That's how
I used to hand out the beatings, and now I am the beaten.
Whenever I think of Riot, I always think of this one line someone said when they were describing the concept of like the Christian hell, and it's such a banger line because it explains what it would be like to work at Riot. They said, "In hell, even the demons suffer." Yeah, if you can think of that. That's fucking deep, man. That's what it's like.
It's true.
What do you think?
It's true. But
I remember back in the day.
Sorry, jump in, Harris.
Yeah, I was going to say one thing. Back in the day, I remember I was playing League of Legends in like 2009.
Yeah.
And I remember when you used to try to log into the server and you'd press the play button, sometimes it would be grayed out. I don't know if you guys remember what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And you had to, it was like some old school, like Super Nintendo, like cheat code you'd put in up, down, left, right. And it would actually unlock the thing. And this is
Konami
old
code.
school, like League of Legends, like
this is true.
janky game, man. They don't have servers that work.
I remember there was all sorts of shit like that with the very first client in 2009. I mean, the game was, people don't realize how bad it was at launch.
It was so
because I was in the Heroes and Neweth Dota 2 waiting room.
Of course.
So I was I was kind of like, well,
that was the perceived wisdom in esports, was everyone's going to chill in on for a while, then we'll see how Dota 2 goes. But not like the joke is, Richard makes it like as a joke on himself that he told D-Man it wouldn't go anywhere. No one thought this game would go anywhere. It was just one of another million Dota clones.
When it came out, right, that my famous hot take, Harris, was League of Legends will never amount to anything. It's Babby's first MOBA. It simplifies too many mechanics. It's just not going anywhere. And I remember, I had good friends at the time. Obviously, don't really talk to them anymore. But Joe Miller and D-Man were among the many people that had sort of been co-opted from other games, because Riot were like, we want our commentators to come from like FPS games because they're the big, exciting, they're the exciting ones. And so I remember we were at this thing called an I-Series. It's basically like an equivalent of a local, because I know obviously you were talking about doing some Smash locals in Brooklyn. It's basically a local for the UK, and typically it was at a race course. We were there this one year, and I saw D-Man, who I knew from Call of Duty 4, and Joe Miller, that I'd even cast with him a few times at this point in Counter-Strike. And they came in and they were wearing a League of Legends t-shirt and had like tons of League of Legends merch under their arms. And I was like, what the fuck? You play that shit? That's fucking garbage. and like D-Man said, play that shit. I'm going to be casting that shit. And I was like, I was trying to talk them out of it. I was like, guys, you're going to fuck up your whole career. You stay in Call of Duty 4, man. That's going to, So I was way off the read on League of Legends, and I always have to own
I don't know
if
you want to be a League of Legends caster, must.
Yeah. I was like, that game's going nowhere, guys. And I remember we were all sat in a circle. It was like us and like, Red Eye was probably there and a few others. And they were like, well, we'll see. We think we're making a good decision. We're very excited by what Riot's got. And I'm like, bro, you're going to be back in a year. And of course, they went on to be the biggest caster duo in League of Legends, which was the biggest esport in the world at the time. So can't win them all, Harris, is what I'm trying to say. As a lawyer, I'm sure you appreciate that.
You got paid less, though, than casters in other games. So was it really worth it?
One of my highlights that I remember
was for D-Man and fucking Joe, for sure.
I remember I was at a bar in New York City, and I just remember seeing both of you guys. They were showing the E-League, and I remember seeing you guys on that, and I was just like, oh shit, like, now this is real now. Those were my friends.
You might say we peaked. You might say we peaked. But yeah, but anyway, so on just to wrap up the 2XKO stuff, I mean, I think it's kind of instructive that like Riot went and created a bunch of games using the League of Legends IP, and none of them have done really well. And also, what's funny on the other end of the equation, a lot of people in the FGC were like, oh shit, Riot Games is making a fighting game. That's going to be so good for us. We're going to get a bunch of normies coming in, and there'll be money. We won't just have to rely on like Evo. We'll have something else. And, obviously they got people from, Evo to go and create, create things that Riot Games do. And so everybody was expecting this game to be A, huge, B, bring in normies, C, have its own tournament circuit, which again creates jobs in the ecosystem. And now it just looks like it's going to do none of those things and achieve none of those things. And it's like,
and by the way, when you see the announcement with the riotgames.com URL, it's bad, because that's where they hide the stuff they don't want anyone to see.
That's when it's bad news.
I'll say this, Richard, you said something really interesting. And I remember when I was kind of getting into like the esports scene in the 2014, 2015 era. I remember I was getting into the HOTS scene. And there were some just grassroots HOTS orgs that were talking about like Heroes of the Storm, about like how Blizzard was making a MOBA that was going to be competitive with like League of Legends at the time. Yeah. And they're like, guys, it's Blizzard. Like Blizzard's too big to fail. They make like successful products. And I was just like, but this game sucks. Like, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter that Riot is making a fighting game. They're going to throw money behind it. Like, the cream will rise to the top. Like, this is based on merit. Like, if you're a good game, you're a good game. And this is not a good game. And that's really all there is to it. And this IP has not done a good job attracting new people. And just like HOTS. HOTS did attract people in MOBA. It failed. And so we haven't learned the lesson yet. I don't know that we'll ever learn the lesson. But, like, just because something is affiliated with a really popular studio doesn't mean fucking shit, dude.
I mean, HOTS especially was egregious because it was late to the party. That was when I was super juiced in with Blizzard until Heroes of the Storm. And, I mean, as in, high executives used to, like, sound me out for ideas.
Really?
They loved me because I was the guy that was kicking the shit out of Riot every week. And I remember I even said to one of them, I won't name the executive, they were like, man, we fucking love you. You make Riot's life hell. And I said, if you ever did the same, I'd do it to you too, right? And then and that got real quiet real quick. But anyway, I got invited to some Blizzard party that fuck knows, because I was there for the launch of Diablo 3. I was there for the launch. I think I was there for every major launch they did, going all the way back to Cataclysm. For WoW. And I've got a ton of like insane rare merch from those launches, all the press packs that we got, brooches when StarCraft 2 launched. I was at the launch for that. I was the first English speaking journalist to have a review of that, which is interesting. But anyway, no one remembers that. But anyway, I went to some party and we were having beers. And they were telling me all about Heroes of the Storm before it came out. And I said, how's it going to be different, right? Because, like, it's cool. You've got some fantastic IP, StarCraft, Warcraft dudes fighting each other. That's the dream, right? Diablo, totally get it. But how's it going to be different to every other MOBA? And they said, that's the key. It's going to be more team-focused. And I was like, right. And they said, and also, I don't know if you've seen esports is getting big. What we're going to do, because it's more team focused, we might even launch it with like the ability to like pick a jersey of your favorite esports team. And you can play in that jersey on that character. And I was like, wow. And so they were telling me all of this shit. And I said, and I said, dude, I hate to break it to you, but like you're late to the party, and your idea about being more team focused over individual focus is dog shit. And won't work, because that people want to see a faker pop off. They don't want to see an SK Gaming do really well. That's not what MOBAs are for. MOBAs are for individual moments of excellence, with very few exceptions. Right? Yeah. With very few exceptions. Like sometimes you can have an insane team composition that no one's done before, and it pops up. But generally speaking, it's about individual excellence. And so I explained this to them. And then I ended up doing the Heroes of the Storm DreamHack Valencia, I think it was. And on that desk, they had to use a separate piece of software for the draft. And I said on air, as a host, that's fucking stupid. And that was it. But those two things, and I was done with Blizzard. I was out. They hate me.
That's
forever.
So funny.
So, by the way, another thing that's so weird to me about this is another thing I find really convenient about certain projects that Riot does. They tend to cancel them, or they become not as big right before they'd actually have to, pass the mustard, wouldn't they? Be actually fucking good. Like, here's an obvious area this game would have completely failed. So you're going into the fighting game community, and your Riot Games that has never run a large tournament circuit. You run leagues. Mm-hmm. You're already completely antithetical to every competitor within your scene. The entire scene of fighting games is local people play small weekend tournaments, which go into regional tournaments. By the way, it's actually, if you don't know Riot Games, how esports itself grew into an industry that you then attached yourself onto like a fucking tick. So what's mad about that is I don't even see how they would run it. Like, what is it going to be an LCS for fucking fighting games? How would that work? I mean, how would any of it work, by the way? Would it still be a one-on-one sport? Would there be a team? I genuinely think like it's a bit like the Overwatch League. Like, all your ideas have yet to ever work in real life. Like, show me how this would work.
It's so, it's so funny because the fighting game community, as you say, it's so grassroots based. Like, I can remember in 2008 when I was competing in local brawl competitions in some random guy's basements in the Bronx. Like, that's what fighting games is. And if you're not going to make that available or like incentivize that, and Riot does not have a good history of incentivizing that. Really, they really don't. They shut that down. And so, unless they're going to come out and kind of promote that, then I don't know how they would ever compete in this area, because that is what people want to do in fighting games. Like I said, like to you guys before, I would go to Brookland Brawls on the Sundays over at Brookland in in Bushwick, Brooklyn. So that was what I did for several years, and I competed, and I was on commentary, and like that's what people like about fighting games. It's a small, tight knit community.
It's one of my theories as to why Valorant never could have succeeded anyway. It could never be bigger than CS, because what they missed is part of the beauty of CS isn't the game, it's the circuit. It's that every 2 weeks you have playoffs into a championship Sunday, into like this. Instead, they did the same thing. They made it like instead of leagues, what they did is that was what the regions are, but then you go into the real tournament, and they never made the regions playoffs feel like in a LAN. So the joke in their game, why they are still a laughing stock in CS to this day, is because every year they do that exact same post that gets the same fucking meme takeoff, which is once you don't make it to champions, the equivalent of worlds in Valorant, some pro has to be like, well, that's me done on August 23rd for the year. And then everyone in CS is like, what? Like, what are you talking about? But that's real. That is life for everyone season, like the top 16
June.
Teams. Yeah. Basically, if you're the 5th best team in like Europe or whatever, at that point in the year, you're just done sort of. So it was like baseball at the end of the season or something. Like, it's so bizarre.
Yeah, it's really tough. And like you bring up a good point just in general as well. I mean, like one of the things Counter-Strike has done that I don't think a lot of esports realistically have achieved. I might even include League of Legends in this. Certain cities now are synonymous with the game. And people want to go to those cities and see that tournament. And we've really globalized the circuit in a very interesting way, especially in Counter-Strike for the next couple of years. We're going a little bit further afield. We're going to be in Argentina. We're going to be in Singapore. But it's like, a Cologne, like it's almost reflexive now. Again, I was going to Cologne for years, not related to esports, just related to great nightlife. And, and if you say Cologne now, I think Counter-Strike. I do. I think, I hate to say it, but ESL did a really good job with that branding, the Cathedral of Counter-Strike and all of that stuff. And, even Katowice, even though it's no longer with us, and it was like, I know it gets everyone in trouble. It is not a good city. It is.
The joke is even Polish people used to tell me that, bro, before that whole incident.
I know.
They were like, why is it there?
But it's exactly the irony being it's where me and Duncan grew up, essentially.
Sure, it is.
A shit tatty industrial town.
Absolutely.
So it's not like we have animus towards those places for being like that, but a fucking prestigious city it isn't. Going to Krakow now is great.
Of course.
I love Krakow.
I love it. I really enjoy
the 2016 summer finals were at Krakow.
And there you go. And this is the problem, I think. Like another issue is like by virtue of not having a circuit, there is a little lack of excitement and a little bit of lack of outreach. Being so American and LA centric, I think, and obviously South Korea and then Shanghai. I mean, it's not very exciting, is what I'm saying. And I think a lot of people were probably looking at they're going to make a circuit for the fighting game. Let's see what Riot can do with a circuit run, or let's see what they can do with Valorant. And they just lack the imagination, I think. I think they don't want to go to a country and have to work with local partners, and you lose a little bit of that control. And then if the event goes bad, they go, it's not our fault.
Control and Riot.
Yeah, right.
So you know how that ends.
Well, speaking of that, let's go into it, guys. The 2XKO stuff, like I said, I think we'll probably figure out a separate
episode out of that.
Yeah, because
I'll be back from Cluj soon.
Exactly. You gotta go to Romania for a bit.
By the way, another example: Cluj and Astana rapidly becoming prestigious cities in Counter-Strike. Yeah. Incredible crowds, wonderful parts of the world. I was very worried about going to Kazakhstan, especially during it was the Soviet celebration of World War II victory. So it was heightened military presence.
They were technically on our side.
Listen, couldn't have, the way I always say it, couldn't have done it without them. So
and give Riot time. They are working on Allen, Texas for the next Worlds. Maybe that'll become the new hotspot that everyone wants to visit.
New York too, though. You guys got to come visit.
Yeah, man. But they picked New York and Allen, Texas. Truly, what a combination.
But yeah, we'll pick up the 2XKO stuff. We'll bring on.
The NFL season may be over, but esports season is back. That's right. Counter-Strike and League of Legends are underway, and that means it's the perfect time to shoot your shot on Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. Prize Picks is now giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5. So how do you play Prize Picks? Well, first, you go ahead and select a player. Now, in Counter-Strike, it could be a player with a stat like more or less kills. Same thing with League of Legends, or more or less assists. You pick 2 or more players. You select whether they will get more or less than a certain stat. And if you hit on both, or all 3, or all 4, or all 5, or all 6, well then, you are going to be a winner. Not only that, they've got traditional sports that are still going, like the NBA and the NHL. So there's a lot of different opportunities, but esports coming back up, I'm sure that's particularly interesting to you guys. Right now, you can join millions of users and sign up for America's #1 sports pick app. It's available in all 50 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. And on Prize Picks, how you play is up to you. If you want flexibility, choose Flex Play, where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you want the biggest payouts, go for the Power Play. No matter how you play, Prize Picks is a great way to put your takes to the test. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code HORSEMEN, that's plural, HORSEMEN, to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code HORSEMEN to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right.
Let's talk about the franchising stuff now, because this is really interesting. And we have, like I said, the people here who are dealing with this. And I think we have to start out by setting the stakes for what was actually going on in League of Legends prior to franchising, which caused this shift to happen. Because certainly the game was huge. I mean, when we're talking about Los Ratones' viewership, we're comparing it to the big LCS matches from back in the day, the 500,000 concurrent viewers on Twitch for CLG versus TSM in a regular season game. These were phenomenal viewership numbers. And when this was happening was 2015 and 2016. Now, franchising started in 2017, and it was accelerated by the fact that Overwatch League existed and was signing the partner teams. So Riot was not planning to franchise until 2018 or later, but the timeline was pushed up because they realized that they were in a potentially very dangerous position where teams were going to basically all in on Overwatch because there were preferable terms. And
there was also the thing as well, Monte, where it was somewhat necessitated by the fact that some of the endemic orgs that were huge couldn't get an Overwatch. Some of them were like, I do want a slot. And right, Blizzard was sort of like, listen, I'm trying to talk to like 2 or 3 other, like sports franchises, media entity. You're at the back of the queue, mate. So I also got the vibe as well that some of them were like, look, if there's going to be a franchising, well, then why can't I be in League, which is a game I've helped establish, when I can't, maybe only a couple of us are going to get to the Blizzard table, as it were.
Yeah. And so basically the state of affairs was that we had a game with extraordinary viewership, right? And therefore an extraordinary amount of money that was being made by Riot. And I can tell you, not from this period, but I know some information from slightly earlier than this period. The only piece of information I have ever received about the success of Riot's esports programs was that in the early days of League of Legends, Riot had tied around 25% of their revenue to esports, meaning that they believed that esports was driving a quarter of the microtransactions of the company. So this is, obviously hugely significant, especially for an esports spend that was very low at the time. Remember, the game came out in 2009. They didn't form a league until 2013. In Europe and in the West, in Europe and North America. And they were letting a partner, OGN, handle it basically independently in Korea prior to that point. And then MLG and other entities were picking up tournaments on the circuit. So it was and there were online tournaments that were being run, including by people like me, right? So this is all to say that when we look at the game here and we look at the state of where esports was, this is an extraordinarily profitable entity for Riot. But the teams were getting paid like $25,000, $50,000 a split to compete. There were no player minimum salaries. Like the jokes at the time that getting paid like $60K a year was huge. before franchising, guys.
5.5 fucking K.
5.5 fucking K, the meme, right? But I mean, that was an enormous amount of money. When I can tell you, when we decided to pay Freeze like 100K, that was huge. That was a huge contract for a pro player during this time period. In spite of
a Counter-Strike player at the time would have made like $20,000 a year salary. So like actually League was way more. It was way more.
And you know, these were the salaries that post franchising exploded into like the 20th best support player in the world getting paid $800,000 a year. So, you know, franchising, basically there was no money coming from Riot. There was no stability. And if you were a team at the time, you could, I can tell you because I owned a team. Here's how the sponsorship conversations went. Hello, sir. We would like a sponsorship. Well, you see, I can't give you very much money because I don't know if you're going to be in the league in 6 months. Completely reasonable, right? I can't sign a contract with you if you're going to go from playing in the LCS to playing in, you know, tier 2 ecosystem because you got relegated. This was a problem that even the good teams had because this was a negotiating tactic, guys, even though like clearly Cloud9 and Team Liquid were not going G2. They were not going to get relegated, although Team Liquid nearly did, hilariously. the illegal, questionable double lift load move still, you know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was
back some bangers right now.
I mean, I don't understand how that was allowed. The answer is because Riot didn't want to lose Team Liquid. But in any case, you know, even the teams that were most inconceivable that would be relegated were having issues with sponsors for this reason. There was nothing you owned. So how do you have an asset? How do I get an investor? What am I selling my investor on the value of my company? You know, I don't have an asset. What do American people understand? Owning sports franchises. Who do I want to invest? The same people who invest in sports franchises. By the way, Team Liquid eventually got people who own American sports franchises to invest in Team Liquid. And if I'm Riot, what do I want? I want stability of the teams. I don't want to be involved with a bunch of jokers who, you know, and to be fair, there were a lot of teams with sketchy ownership. Renegades, yeah, make the jokes.
But like MYM wanted to take Selfie's house and all that shit. Yes,
there was a ton of these issues. Like, you know, frankly, even TSM. Is that the person you really want to work with?
Liquids. Remember, it was essentially covered up that a guy that had a fucking drug-induced psychosis was cut from the team unceremoniously without any attempt to help.
Also physically attacked another person in the Team Liquid facilities, but that was not considered an unsafe environment by Riot because they like Team Liquid.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys remember this one, but Monte, like, just to kind of cut in here a little bit, thinking back to NRG in 2016, they actually lost to Cloud9 Challenger team, I think, back at the time, and they were relegated out of the league at that point. And Cloud9 Challenger then came back into the league. And it's kind of funny to think about because, one, NRG's investment went to shit overnight, basically, and they taught everybody a good lesson. And then, two, Jack was able to basically say to everyone, hey, guys, actually, you should be putting a lot of money behind this Challenger team, even though it's not generating any revenue on its own, because you can actually get into the LCS that way. And that's where the money is, to sell that LCS slot to someone
$1 million
that's trying to come in for millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And so the incentive structure was all misaligned. It's like, I actually remember doing this because I was with H2K at the time. And I remember thinking to myself, like, guys, like, one way we could just make money, let's just take all of our players on H2K and put them in a lower league and then just promote. And then we'll sell that team. That was the incentive structure, because league slots were going for millions of dollars at the time because people were getting ready to throw stupid money around. So that's what you wanted to do. And Jack actually did that. And I don't know if you remember who was on that Challenger, that I think it was Cloud9 Challenger team. It was like their original roster. I'm pretty sure it was like
the core of the original one. It was like high.
It was like high balls. Like, give me a fucking break. You think these guys are Challenger players in 2016? They're not. They were coming off a championship a year before.
The joke is, in a game in which, in theory, even the execs are allowed to boost, they actually incentivized actual boosting of fucking team orgs into the league, which is an insane premise. Yeah.
I mean, I remember that very well because I was good friends with some of the NRG execs. I was even staying in an NRG house in Vegas with their CS team for a time. And I remember talking to them on the day before the relegation day. Because wasn't there some fucking drama with GBM? I can't remember what the fuck it was.
Put it this way, he was a nutter. He was like a Korean guy that went a bit nuts in the West.
I'm pretty sure he did something crazy.
Put it this way, I know he did. Put it this way, there was actually a real game where he just like troll picked the champion, for example, Richard lost the game, like somewhat absurd. Yeah, no, that's what I mean. It wasn't just like behind the scenes. I believe he actually had like behavioural issues. And it held them hostage or something mad, you know.
And I remember them saying to me, like, if we get relegated, like we've just poured like, I don't know, the equivalent of $20 million fucking dollars down a toilet. Yeah, and I was like, well, let's hope GBM doesn't troll pick again, lol. You know what I mean? like that is, it is so insane to think that level of investment was contingent on the players' behaviors and ability to perform, especially when, you know, I hate to say it, but 2015, 2016 NA League of Legends, it was really badly run. I mean, you know, like you are talking about a lot of emotionally damaged people being managed in close proximity by other emotionally not damaged, but just like uncaring people, and Adderall getting passed around and performance enhancers, and it was fucking crazy.
It was crazy. I remember the H2K house back in the day, and I've got some stories about that one too. I mean, it was just a wild time in that sphere, just trying to get everyone to just act professionally and you know, not try to kill each other. But I'm sure you guys remember Yonkos and Forgiven going after each other at one point, and I could promise you, I was there. I remember seeing everything going on, and you know, it was a wild time back then. It's very different than what it is today.
And it's
a little bit of that.
No, but here's the interesting part. It's like all of that is bad, but it also had a charm to it that came through because these people were like socially awkward and fucked up in their own ways, but the imperfection kind of like when it came through in the victory, in the good moments, in the broadcast, it was something special. It was just obviously the underbelly was something very like sinister and unacceptable.
You had to manage it.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I that was the problem. I think for the first time, probably in all of esports, you see, it's different in Korea, and Duncan can testify to this. When you had the StarCraft team houses, they were like, because I remember like thinking, oh, South Korea, the mecca of esports, everything's so sophisticated out there and so advanced. I bet they're all in high-tech training facilities. No. They were in the same grinding team houses where you would have 3 players in a room and they would have those little bits of like towel dividing the floor mattress they would sleep on. And I was like, wow, it can't be like that. These are elite level athletes, but it was like that. The difference was like the South Korean players, because it was so kind of like stigmatized as a profession, they thought that was living. The problem then happened. You had a bunch of North American guys, right? We're all going to be in a big house in LA. Let's go. Like, and they took a bunch of like emotionally vulnerable fucking teenagers and young adults, threw them into this high pressure cooker environment in LA, and then said, right, you're on your own. We're off. We've got other teams to manage. And it was just a disaster. You know, I'm kind of amazed more bad things didn't happen because it was a powder keg
all the time. We were very afraid because, I mean, I don't want to turn this into. I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. You tell me, Monte. You know. But I remember back in the day thinking, like, guys, like we've got 6, 7, you know, like I don't know, 20-something-year-old. Yeah, well, no, I wasn't going to do that. Sorry. 6 or 7, 20-something-year-olds in a house in Germany, living in a foreign country. Like someone's gonna, you know, what happens if someone like comes into that house and something bad happens? Like we got to protect against that, and that was like a real thought that we were thinking quite frequently, actually.
Well, but no, these stories are all relevant because the point here, guys, is that it was more or less a shit show. And like,
it was total amateur hour. Let's be clear. The one good thing I will say that came out of franchising, the elevated value of a slot, definitely. You know, it was like panning for gold. You know, you quickly realized you couldn't have liabilities around, and it did do a pretty good job of like clean, if you want to call it this, cleaning up the scene. And I say this with all respect as well. There were a lot of competitors that didn't have the emotional maturity to be a competitor that this era pushed out, for good or ill. It might have been the worst thing that happened to them, that their professional playing career dream was over in the short term, but long term they would have burned out, and it would have not been cool. And the franchising era, the one thing I think is good about it is that it definitely made people professionalize with a expediency.
But the thing is that they needed the money to do it. And I think that's the key thing that people are missing, is that what you had here was, it appeared, a recipe for success for investors and for people with real operational knowledge to come in. The reason why people will be like, well, why were they selling the slots for $20 million, $10 million, $12 million, $10 million, depending on whether it was Overwatch or LCS or LEC, right? And the answer is, it wasn't necessarily, like, obviously Activision, Blizzard, and Riot did not need that money. And it wasn't some sort of cynical. Yeah, exactly. It's not some sort of cynical cash grab from them. The point of doing that, a lot of it was that they were trying to gate entry. And they were saying, okay, one of two things are going to happen. Either you clown endemic teams are going to partner up with real investors and hopefully professional sports teams that have institutional operational knowledge that can help not only you, but us, right, figure out how to market this thing. I mean, which is totally reasonable, by the way. It was a totally reasonable position to have. And honestly, as a team, it was kind of a blessing, because, like, you got great knowledge about esports, but you have never run a real business of the scale of a sports team that has to have media training, even stuff like player performance optimization, marketing, branding. I mean, this is all stuff that we were all doing by the seat of our pants. And so there is value to the owners to bringing these people in. And then also, and then the other thing is, like, okay, so if you're not going to partner up, we will just get Golden State Warriors to come in and buy a slot, right? Because they can afford it. The market is mature enough now. And honestly, there wasn't a reason necessarily. I mean, we can all look at it in retrospect, and some people here will say, well, there was obviously a ceiling because, we're used to this. And clearly not everybody in the world is going to be involved in League of Legends. The game is too complicated for it to be like the NBA, right? It's not, there's a lot of barriers. But just looking at the numbers, if you were not sophisticated at the time, you would have looked and said, holy shit, esports went from nothing, super, 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 super niche when we were all part of it, to here comes Twitch and streaming, and all of a sudden we have 500,000.
I'll give you some reference
viewers.
Numbers, Monte. The last ever CS 1.6 tournament, which as a result people tuned in for specifically because it was the last 1.6 tournament, was in like the spring of 2012, and that famously had 40,000 live viewers.
Yep.
Now, at the era you're talking about with franchising, a regular season game of LCS in NA could get 500,000 viewers. So if I plot that on a graph, and especially if I'm some scammer who then makes a trajectory for the next 10 years, it's easy to see how you could sell someone, Monte, that with their risky part of their investment, this could 10 or 100x. Like, that's exactly what the investor, I can tell you, we've been on the calls, they want to hear that. They actually don't want you to go, look, this is a mom and pop business. It's going to grow 5 to 10%. They don't want that. They want it to be, can it 10x?
Yeah.
If it can 10x, I'm in. If it's not, I'm going to get to the next guy who says it's going to 10x.
I mean, doing E-League, Duncan can tell you this. We fucking had the conversation where it was, guys, listen, president of the network came in, right? And he's like, guys, this is a long-term investment. This isn't about viewership. It's not about numbers. We're building something here together as a group, as a family. We want you to come along with us and help build it. So it doesn't matter what the ratings say, okay? Then we did our first broadcast. They had the ratings expedited overnight, the Nielsen's, right? And I was like, wait, what? You did what? Right? I thought they didn't matter, like we'll check them in the morning. Surely they had them expedited overnight. And we had a meeting the next day. And they were like, we were like thinking, we get a 0.4, 0.5, we've got something. Our first show hit a 0.2. We're on the Friday night death slot where
we're doing super bad for that.
we're doing 200,000 viewership, and the after us, it's a rerun of Big Bang Theory, and that would do 1.2. That's like 1.2 million. Like, you know what I mean? And anyway, they were like, oh, we thought if we had a 0.4 or a 0.5, we would really have something here. But no, don't worry, guys. We're going to build up. We're going to build up. And we very rarely got above what they wanted us to start at the baseline. Very rarely happened. And obviously, the viewership was a factor. It's always a factor, no matter what they tell you. If no one's watching, what's the
business.
fucking point? Yeah, exactly.
So this is all to say that, like, we can look at things in retrospect, but if you were at the time being like, holy shit, this is a rocket to the moon, there were legitimate reasons that people might think that. And as such, like, the purpose behind franchising was to partially, basically, just be a clown filter, to filter out the clowns so that you could have a more professional scene with better backing. And it's true. If you are Activision, Blizzard, or Riot, you want better partners. Like, is the best partner for you somebody who's like an endemic esports person, or an actual sports team that can maybe help broaden the reach of your game? And the answer is obviously the professional sports team.
This was the problem though, Monty, right? Like, we were so close. I remember, again, I think I even said it to Duncan. I was like, I think we did it. Like, I think somehow we curated and we've guided esports into the mainstream. We did it, guys. We've made it. This is it. It's going to be fine. Nothing could go wrong from this point, because we went from no viewership, nobody giving a fuck, to simultaneously, League of Legends is popping off, franchising is happening, people are buying these slots for tens of millions. We're on TBS with Counter-Strike. That's going incredibly well. Those weren't franchises, but they were contracts specifically with the teams, right? And they weren't player-owned slots, which, by the way, the norm up until that point. And we had a huge drama about this, and I still think this is the right way to do things. It should belong to the team. It should belong to the org, and you should field the players you want. If 3 players qualify and get you there, and then you don't want those 3 players, tough shit. Stay good. Welcome to the world of professional sports. Yeah,
I remember. And
right.
I remember we purchased a CWL team in like January of 2016, and we're like, well, who actually owns this slot?
Right.
And there was like no guidance.
Nope.
Amazingly. Like, Activision had no guidance for us whatsoever on who actually owned this slot. And I'm just like, guys, like, do we have like a rule book which maybe says, like, it was like, they came out like, oh, if 3 players move with this, then that belongs to the 3 players team. And then we're like, okay, then we need to have them assign the rights to the slot to us. It was just a complete fucking mess. No one had any idea what the hell they were doing back in those days.
And the crazy thing with that, Harris, is as well, I mean, like, these things, people couldn't even conceptualize that they were an asset. Slot in the league was an asset. You would have to,
asset.
Yeah, and you would have to explain it to people, going, you really should decide who owns this. And the players would be like, well, it's kind of us, isn't it? Right? And I'm like, yeah, but what if the org cuts you? Well, don't we just keep it? I was like, there'll probably be a legal battle for it, because it's literally worth the right to compete for millions of dollars.
This is the whole business.
It'll never happen. Don't worry, Rich. You and your paranoid theories. And obviously,
what's the point of having an organization if we don't get to run it how we want to run it? What are you telling me? I have to play with these same players every single time? Yeah. I can't get a new player, or I lose the slot, my business goes to shit?
Yeah.
Okay, what happens if I want to improve my team, improve my viewership, get sponsors? Oh, you can't do that.
And I remember Valve were going, no, that's brilliant if it belongs to the players. Valve were very much like that. They're way more anarchic than people think they are. Oh, yeah. They were like, the players should own the fucking slots, right? And then that way, you don't need orgs anymore. And I don't have to have a conversation with Cloud9. I can just talk to the players, which is what they want to do. They've always
a high level of sophistication in that conversation.
They've always viewed orgs as the middleman. But anyway, to the point, all of this happened at once. And then you know who fucked it up? Wasn't Riot. It was Blizzard. It was Activision Blizzard, because when they wanted to have their original pitch for the Overwatch League, it was clear they turned around and they said to esports orgs that were initially interested, they said, you're not the type of client we're looking for. So understand, they didn't want the people that by this point were in E-League, had got Riot League of Legends franchise slots. They didn't want them. They were too small. They wanted someone, right? So understand, for me, they're the creme de la creme. They're the people that have ran successful.
They also all had Overwatch
rose
teams,
to the
such as
top.
Cloud9 team.
Yep.
They all had
in
them.
the
They all had
in
them.
the
Yeah,
end, they
Fizz,
did.
all of them.
In the end, but this is the part of the history everyone forgets. They were all told not to even bother pitching. They're like, even if you've got the money, we don't want you. And they sent a deck out to, like, the Robert Crafts of the world and all these other people.
2016 BlizzCon.
Yep, correct.
If you were at 2016 BlizzCon, you could go, and they had a private room with Serena Williams there, Robert Kraft, like several other people that were there that were like high.
I never met more celebrities than I did that year. I mean, I got pulled into meetings with fucking A-Rod from baseball. It was crazy.
Richard, Doa and I were casting the 2017 Overwatch World Cup, and we were casting the middle of a game, and somebody walked up behind me where I was casting backstage, and I looked over my shoulder, and it was Elon Musk, who was standing behind me while I was casting.
That's got a different complexion now, hasn't it? He's like, do you want to come to an island? No, I'm kidding. Obviously, Elon was never on that island.
Yeah, we're casting the game on Ilias right now.
It also is famous that he was in Overwatch because he himself leaked that picture where he actually had Amber Heard dress up as like fucking Mercy from Overwatch for reals.
I mean, the Fnatic, by the way, the Fnatic Overwatch team at the time literally went to Elon Musk's house to play Overwatch and like with his kids. That's a thing that happened too.
Yeah. I mean, so anyway.
Funny enough, one of his kids was called 2XKO.
That's a good one. That's the singer of the show so far. But anyway, so these celebrities all wanted to know, is it worth 20 to 40 million for an Overwatch slot? And they're like, this esports thing's popping off. I put some money into a CS org, and they're doing well. They're an E-League. So, Richard, should I buy an Overwatch? And I said no. Every single time. You'd be out of your motherfucking mind. Don't touch this fucking thing. Blah, blah, blah. And in the end, they sold so few of the slots to the people they targeted, because they did target Serena Williams and all these other celebrities, that in the end, they had to go back to the esports people and say, we'll let you in, but it's still going to cost you. And that relationship is where all of a sudden the venture capital wasn't like a gimme. It was basically, we're going to want a return on this. This is a big investment. And so for me, the franchising world wasn't really undone by Riot. It was undone by the Overwatch League. That is a much bigger specter in this story than anything Riot actually did.
Sure, but this is all to say that when we're talking
Monte involved in both, of course, just
and also involved like in the middle of the business of both. But in any case, like the point is the Overwatch stuff did push Riot forward, and like we've talked about the Overwatch League stuff. That's it's a related issue. But in this case, for League of Legends, what it did do was it accelerated the timeline. And I do want to talk now about a document that was actually leaked in 2016, which was a kind of a demand letter that was sent to Riot. Yep. I have a feeling this was probably leaked by the teams themselves because they were negotiating against both Blizzard and Riot at the time, and they wanted to make their positions clear kind of to both entities. But this is a letter that was put out there, and we will link it below, guys, so you can take a look at it. But basically, it's a list of,
are we actually going to put it out?
It was already put out.
Oh, sorry. I see. I can never tell if we're looking at like the secret shit or the.
This was put out on Slingshot back in the day.
Yeah, so this was something that was
Slingshot.
released in 2016, and basically it's a list of demands that are entirely reasonable. But this just goes to show why the owners wanted franchising at the time. So I'll have Harris talk about this, because this was probably the only time that all of the I'll get there. All of the European and North American teams actually agreed on something, which is astounding, because usually it was nobody agreeing on anything, and then it was the European teams agreeing on something or the North American teams agreeing on something, but they never all agreed on anything except for this one thing, with the exception of horrible traitor Rick Fox, which we will get to. Rick Fox was the one person who did not sign this document, and we will get to the reasons why, but basically his refusal to play ball with the rest of the teams massively weakened the negotiation position of the League of Legends teams. And he was basically the Brutus in this scenario. But let's start with, what did the teams want at this point in time, Harris? Because if you look at this, the bar is almost laughably low for the things that they were asking for.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that this, if you read the very first paragraph, the problems to be solved paragraph, it's pretty clear here, right? Like, we're looking for the removal of relegation. That was what every single team was saying at the time. Get rid of relegation. Why was that the case? For the exact reason that you just talked about. Monte, you were talking about sponsorships. You're talking about investment. And I want to be clear.
And it was being abused. As we said, it was being abused by the teams to farm slots to sell for millions of dollars. So you guys are like, well, I sure hope that, everybody today is like, wow, relegation was great at getting new players in the league. It wasn't doing that, guys. It was literally like a bunch of washed veterans who were just farming slots for millions of dollars.
High balls, Altec, Lemon Nation, who had played the year prior and won a championship, being put into the lower league so they could promote and then sell that slot. That was what relegation was at that point. Why was it like that? Let's talk about why. It's because League of Legends and every esport has never figured out their finances. The financials at the top league have never made sense. And if that is going to be the case, that I can turn around and make more money from flipping a slot to an investor who wants to get in than actually competing and being good in that league, my financial incentive is completely divorced from reality. And so it doesn't make any freaking sense why I would try to compete in the top league when I could make more money in the bottom league to farm a slot. And so that's one thing we're trying to solve, just at the very outset. Very simple problem. Two, think about this. You're looking at what's happening when this letter came out. You're looking at what just happened to NRG. You're seeing investment dried up instantaneously. Your thought process at that point as a team in this top league that's trying to take on investment is, that can't happen to me. What happens? How do I prevent that? I put more money into players. I spend more money, as much as I possibly can, because I know that my value to this investor conversation I'm having right now, or to anyone, my value to a sponsor, it goes to nothing if I go into that secondary league. So it inflates the player salaries. And that's exactly what you saw. Inflated player salaries when, as we were talking about at the very outset, they were very low prior to 2015, 2016. They ballooned, right? Because now we say, oh, there's money in this. Oh, but I can't be relegated. I got to spend. I need to prevent that relegation. And that's actually not endemic to esports, by the way. And Monte, I shared this with you at some point. Just basically looking at the top Premier League teams. And there is a 0.86, I believe, correlation between wage expenditure at the top of the table and at the lower table, where the lower people on the table are typically spending closer to like something like 90% or 70 to 90% of their revenue, where it's much less at the top, because there's a huge incentive to prevent yourself from being relegated because you lose all that money. And so that is something we were very cognizant of at the time, that we were talking about a lot amongst the European teams. I don't know if you want me to keep going.
No. But by the way, guys, again, we've said this a million times. If you are running a successful entertainment product like a sports league, the reason why the NFL has a 48% revenue to salary cap, 48% of total revenue is the salary cap of the teams, right? From the media rights deals, other, I do not believe it includes stadium revenue. That's for every team to kind of like, get themselves.
If they define hockey revenue or football related revenue, if it's from the football event, they would include concessions and tickets.
Well, there you go. But in any case, the point is 48% of the revenue is the salary cap. So when we're talking about Premier League, you guys love the relegation system. That's not a good business, guys. Spending 90% of your revenue on your players so you don't get relegated is a bad, unstable business, period.
It doesn't even work in football, Monty. It's why in the Premier League they have a thing called parachute payment to allow people that go down to have a chance to come back up. But even then, there's all sorts of like weird loopholes that make it very hard. I'll give you an example. If you sign good players when you're in the Premier League, then you get relegated. Then other teams go, why the fuck would I want to sign that player? It's probably shit. And then suddenly, when you've paid money for that player, there's no way to ever like offset the costs. It's a nightmare, mate. The idea anyone looks at fucking European football and goes, they cracked it. You're an idiot.
That's
mate.
what we should do.
Have you noticed? The less they know about it, the more enticing an idea it seems. Like all bad ideas.
I mean, just to give you some examples as well, Monty, from the sport, it's like sometimes if you get relegated and it's like you've spent to try and avoid relegation, but you've spent poorly and you go down anyway, those parachute payments don't even cover the players you've signed to stay up. And then a lot of all your best players have clauses, if relegated, I can be sold on the cheap. So then you lose all your best players. I maintain this. It's a lot harder to get out the championship than it is to stay in the Premier League. And because you have to go to like fucking dog shit places like Doncaster and fucking Rotherham away in the rain. And these players that used to like Premier League luxury stadiums are now playing in absolute shitholes. Like, and it just breaks their brains. And so you sell all your best players. You have to find a rabble that can get you promoted again. You don't get promoted again. Let's say you get relegated twice in a row, like Prem, Champ, League One. You're over. And it's actually happened. I mean, some of these clubs just go out of business, like fucking Portsmouth. Portsmouth were a fantastic example. Had a decent manager, decent squad, won a trophy, couldn't stay in the Prem. Where the fuck are they now? You know, trust that model is bad. That is like it is a bad
and
model.
Also to tie into that, why do you think the biggest clubs in the Premier League and La Liga and Serie A wanted to do a Super League, get away from this and go to the American franchise model? Literally, like, will Americans please just stop going? There's a random place in Europe, I've never looked into it, but I've heard it's a fucking paradise. We should go to the Norwegian system. We should go to how about fucking read a book first before you pick some utopia that you don't even know about until that's paradise? It's fucking nonsense, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. It is crazy.
I'll say it. So just looking right now at the pre-tax profitability, and I pulled up a Deloitte study on they do an annual football finance review.
Yep.
And the big 5 European league clubs pre-tax profitability in 2024, they were in the whole $961 million. And if you look at the debt ratios that they have, almost every single one of these clubs has no cash on hand and they are massively in debt.
Oh yeah.
And so like to sit there and tell me that that's what we should be emulating, this kind of thing where you do not have a guarantee, you're already in the sports entertainment business, which is a shit profitability business anyway, and we're going to add another layer of complexity on top of that. You might as well be esports at that point, guys.
And also, look at who owns the Premier League teams. As the costs have spiraled, guys, it's Russian oligarchs and Middle Eastern sheikhs. Is this what you want? Like, because this is the unsustainable money where it becomes vanity projects, money laundering, sports washing, right? And I mean, that's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah.
But
yes.
The reason why is because it's an unstable business. That's the reason why.
Put it this way, like there was also in Spain, especially La Liga, the big clubs there were essentially getting out of massive debt liabilities by remortgaging land that they owned as part of the club that essentially had risen in value due to like new laws that had come into place. And so they go, we'll remortgage that, right? That's $1 billion. Great. Okay. We're now we sign £1 billion worth of players, right? Okay. Now what? You know?
And it's also the instability of the system crept into league because look at Schalke. They bought a team. Their soccer team did badly. Then they had to sell the league slot for money.
And here's the thing, I don't
Which accidentally probably made them a profit in the long run.
True. I don't want a European Super League. See, I don't think that's the answer. The answer is to just get the fucking money out of the sport. That's what you do if you want to fix this problem. These things, once a football club is essentially an asset in a fucking billionaire's portfolio, you're fucked. What even is that? That's not what sports teams are meant to be. They were never meant to be the things they've become. And esports, unfortunately, has got there way quicker. That we've gone from in 20 years, we've gone from a dude in a bedroom who likes video games, pays a guy on Fiverr to make him a logo and says, I am now Team Monte Cristo. You come and represent me. We're going places to, okay, Robert Kraft owns this. Like, we did that in 20 years, guys. It's fucking psychopathic, you know?
We're talking about security for teams when they got that franchising spot, made them feel a lot more comfortable. And if you'd like to share the feeling that teams got when they franchised, well, you should think about ExpressVPN, because that'll make you feel nice and secure. Basically, anytime you connect to an unencrypted network like a cafe, hotel, airport, all those public Wi-Fis that you guys are on, your online data is not secure. So if there's somebody on the same network, they can get in there and take your personal data, which means that VPNs are very handy. Plus, the ExpressVPN app is incredibly easy. All it does is you hit a button, choose your server. It runs in the background the entire time. So I basically have it on all the time. It's so fast, I don't even know that it's on, but I know that it's keeping me secure. Plus, if you guys follow along with our movie show, Foreplay, over on the Last Free Nation Movies channel, there's really good applications for ExpressVPN. It works for every streaming site. It's the only VPN I have ever used that works for absolutely every streaming site. And this is important because you probably already are paying for a streaming site that may get you a movie you want to watch, but if it's not near in your location, you may have to VPN to a different location on Earth in order to access that movie. Or if you're me and in Korea and you would like to, pay people to use their services and watch their content, some of that's only available in America. Well, I could just VPN into America, and then I can watch the HBO that I pay for example. So it makes it extremely easy. ExpressVPN is super secure, and it works on all devices, phones, laptops, tablets, and more. You can even install it on certain routers, so you can use the VPN on your entire network at one time. So everything is great. It's rated #1 by top tech reviewers like CNET and The Verge out of all VPNs. And you can secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/horsemen, plural. That's HORSEMEN. That's expressvpn.com, expressvpn.com/horsemen, to find out how you can get up to 4 extra months. expressvpn.com/horsemen.
I want to go back and talk about the actual demands during this period, because if you look at this letter, it's pretty ridiculous. Where
it's pathetic.
It's pathetic. So basically, Riot was offering in 2017.
No, prophetic.
Prophetic.
What's going on now? Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Riot, it is pathetic. Also,
but
you are correct.
The offer from Riot, get this, guys, was a minimum guarantee of $100,000 or euros, depending on whether it was NA or EU, per team to be split 50-50 with the players. That was the revenue they were giving them for this time period, which had extraordinary viewership. Now, if you guys probably don't know this, the price that you would pay for an influencer these days, and granted, this was 10 years ago, but the market price, if I were to sponsor someone's stream, is typically $1 per average concurrent viewer. So that means that if there is a CLG versus TSM game that has 500,000 concurrent viewers, a sponsor who would be sponsoring an individual influencer, not something as professional as a Riot Games broadcast, would be paying $500,000 for that stream. One stream. Okay? That's the market value now. Now, even if it was half of that, how can you justify Riot offering $100,000 per team, per split? I mean, that's outrageous for the amount of money that they are making. You know what I mean? But this is the realities that the teams were dealing with, because you cannot have any kind of business. And Riot, there's a line in here. The teams have been advised that operating a business at a loss is our choice.
No, that's actually something that they said to us. I remember having conversations, and they said that to us.
Yeah,
no, I mean,
how do I operate this business profitably? I own nothing. I can't get sponsors because of relegation. You're offering me $100,000 to run a 5-man team. And I have to get visas for foreign players. I have to provide places for these people to live. Because, by the way, you put this in Los Angeles. I didn't put this in Los Angeles. You put it in LA. So I either have to pay my players enough to live in Los Angeles, or I have to house them. These are the choices that you're making. And this is the offer that Riot had at the time, which is what prompted all of the teams, except for Echo Fox and Rick Fox, to I
still hate to be that guy, guys. So I'm just gonna say, these are all valid criticisms of the Riot system, but there's nothing that says there Immortals, by way of a, for instance,
we'll get there.
right, should come in and pay 1.8 million a year to a fucking mediocre.
That happened
League
much
Legends
later,
player.
to be fair.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, this is like
the original Immortals
after relegation went.
The original Huni Reignover Immortals contracts were about $250,000, which was a lot for the time, obviously. But I'm just trying to point out the financial reality. So, Harris, what did you think of these demands when you looked at this letter? And because you were with H2K around this time period when this stuff was happening, what were the financial realities you were experiencing versus what Riot was actually doing to support the teams?
By the way, also one thing at the beginning, because I've seen this fucking rodeo before me, when people hear H2K, they go, "Oh, you're just salty. You couldn't get into the franchise, and your team was shit and never won the." If people don't know, as far as I know, H2K was one of the best finance teams in the European market and had a lot of money to spend. Actually, true.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Actually, at the time, I put together an investor group that acquired H2K in 2015, and it was with, and I remember you talking about this because I was watching a video recently. It was with the partner at one of the bigger New York law firms, and you know, it was a very well financed and capitalized team.
They just didn't put up with the bullshit, guys, because like they were the ones fighting against the stupid shit that was going on to make this, you know, they wanted to make this a sustainable business, and they were much more vocal about Riot than most other teams were.
I actually don't talk that much. You know, this might be the first interview I've ever done about my time at H2K, or like not interview, or like just conversation about it, because there's actually a pretty big stigma against that. Even within the industry, there was for quite some time to kind of be with H2K. And, you know, people don't really understand that, yeah, we were kind of kicking the hornet's nest a little bit, but that's because it needed to be kicked, and because no one wanted to fucking do the right thing and step up. And if you go back, I don't know, the website's still up there. We put out 3 letters to Riot, all basically letters, we called them H2K letters to the fans, where we went in depth on our P&L, and we talked about how much money we were losing every single year. We were very transparent about this. And we said, Riot is not taking steps to remedy this. We can't afford to subsidize their $1 trillion business by taking a loss in an unsustainable environment. And we got shit on by the community, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
We got shit on. Yeah. Like, not just the fans, like the esports community as a whole also shit on us. Other people that should have been there with us in that fight, they were not. And, you know, I look back on that and I kind of said, well, look, guys, you know, look at what we were saying. This was right and you were wrong. And no one wants to kind of concede that. But yeah, I was there with H2K when that was happening. I was in those conversations because what I went to Germany to do in 2016, I put together and I helped put together a group that basically negotiated against Riot to remove relegation. That was the purpose of me getting involved in that first instance. And we had weekly conversations with the executive team in the European LCS at the time, the EU LCS, and we were listing out our demands, and we would have weekly conversations with the team owners. And this was a reality for a full year. We did this, and yeah, we had demands. Our demands were pretty simple: remove this system, which is causing so much heartache for our investors, or a headache for our investors. Allow us to be sustainable. Give us a minimum guarantee. That's, you know, we're subsidizing you right now. It's not possible. And we were met with laughs most of the time, to be honest with you. Laughs. People laughed at us.
And the demand in this letter too is not completely unreasonable. It was like $700K a year, and you know, basically the team's response was that, you know, they should provide $700K a year also for using the team's intellectual property and resources, which obviously did have value. If we're going to pretend that TSM's brand didn't have value to the LCS, just look at how viewership has gone since they dropped out, right? So,
or in Europe, when they would constantly build the SK Fnatic, El Clasico, etc. These were core elements. It couldn't just be Team Billy Bob Nobody. Yeah, of course.
And by the way, part of the demand was give us $700K and we will guarantee players a minimum salary of $100K, which is higher than the minimum salary has ever been in LCS, which is $60K, $65K, I believe now. But basically, the teams were offering
75 now.
What?
It doesn't matter.
The thing is, the teams were offering a higher minimum salary than exists to this day, and they were offering to pay $500,000 of their $700,000 minimum to players, which is still a bad business. So the teams were advocating for a business which was still kind of shit, but would also directly benefit the players. And this was the argument that was happening, but it's very difficult because Riot was completely unreasonable. And I can tell you, like, before the franchising era, you basically just signed the partner agreement with them, or they stole your slot. They just took your slot and kicked you out. And there was no recourse because there were arbitration clauses in those contracts that said none of this will be made public. There was a cap on liability of $25,000. And when I was kicked out, I talked to lawyers at large California law firms, and they basically said the combination of the arbitration and the limitation on liabilities made it, in the state of California, very unlikely that you could get out of both of those things. So it's like, you can take this to arbitration, but the maximum amount you're going to make is $25K. Do you want to do it?
Yep. I mean, let's not forget, when we broke down the player contract, there was a limit on the liability that, like, if you were in the studio and a fucking studio light fell on your head and killed you outright, it was, what was it? Your family couldn't sue them for more than 50 grand or whatever the fuck it was. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, there was all kinds of, and I'm a little bit limited in kind of what I can and what I can't say.
Sure, yeah.
Just because,
obviously,
confidentiality. I'm not gonna talk specifically about what the kind of the conversations that transpired and like what exists to this day there. But I will tell you that, broadly speaking, these were concerns of ours. Relegation was a concern of ours. H2K did write a letter to the community. We did say we're suffering losses. By the way, one thing, no one really knows this, or people don't think about this, but one really easy way to tell whether a team is profitable or how profitable it is, go look at their jersey. Just go look at their jersey. How many sponsors are on that jersey, and who are the sponsors? That's a really, really easy way to tell what the sponsorship situation is at that company. And if you go back and you look at H2K's jersey in 2016, this is the team that finished as the 3/4 in the 2016 World Championships. It was not a bad team. By the way, we were actually other than G2, we were actually the best European team in 2016 spring split. We finished as the number 2 team in the spring split. We were number 1 for the majority of that spring split. We couldn't attract any sponsors. No one wanted to give us any sponsorship money. And it's not like we didn't have popular players either. We had Jankos. Look at the roster. Otawamne, Jankos, Forgiven, Ryu, who was at the time a star because of what had happened in Korea. That's a good roster.
You were making Worlds, by the way.
Yeah. We had made Worlds in 2015 as well. And so we couldn't find anyone. And it was remarkable at the time to think about that. No one wanted to sponsor those teams. This is a real concern of ours. The financials were a concern. Riot did not take them seriously. We were talking about this beforehand, but you look back on kind of what Reggie was saying, and Reggie had said something at the time. He had said, these teams aren't profitable. And we haven't even talked about the NA teams and the EU teams kind of coming together, but he basically said, and Thorin did a video on this, and these teams aren't profitable. And then Tryndamere, Mark Merrill, comes and says, well, that's because you're spending all of your money on other esports teams, and we're subsidizing that. And I'm just like,
what money?
As a team owner at the time, or as CEO of a team, I was just like, what are you talking about?
By the way, this is a significant detail, though, because it gets to the idea that even an industry mainstay like Mark Merrill is totally unaware of the financial reality of the teams. Essentially, the joke is he's also on some angle where he thinks that a team like Cloud9 or TSM are the Victorian factory owners making the matchstick girl work for fuck all and then going in a giant mansion with all the money. It's like, what money are you talking about? But at the same time, that's why fans to this day, to make this conversation what it's going to become eventually, that's why fans have such a hard time understanding why you can't just tomorrow dismantle franchising, why it actually is something that so far, I already did this 2 years ago in a fucking video where I gave you the numbers, has actually cost teams insane amounts of money that they've never made anything close to profit. I will tell you to this day, when there is a Reddit thread on the League of Legends sub where a team attempts to claim either we are close to or we have reached profitability, you will be shocked how many upvoted comments are acting like Isn't this just normal? And are you ready for the ultimate punchline? They genuinely assume that the teams that would be profitable must be the biggest and most successful ones. They assume like it must be G2 or T1. They must be the ones that are making all the profit, right? And it's like, no, the other way around, dickhead. They're the ones playing all the giant salaries. Like the only ones that have a chance to go profitable, as we talked about in the Arnold episode, are actually the ones doing an incredibly cynical min-max in the middle. And usually you have to do something absurd, like just in-game overperform because you got some genius coach or you scouted the next great player or something, some factor that isn't really a business concern. And then I'll just tell you this, almost every time you have ever seen one of the big orgs claim to be profitable, again, just fucking read. It'll really help you out. If you actually just read the article, you'll quickly find once you're about 4 paragraphs deep, it isn't from the fucking esports team. So it's complete nonsense. It's like an IP or they're mining crypto. What does that have to do with how they run their League of Legends or CS teams? Or you'll have like G2 will have done some shenanigans where they'll have put multiple companies called a different version of G2, and then they'll only be counting the plus minus for one of the companies while another one offsets a bunch of the costs. It's just, again, financial wankery where you've just been able to say that something is profitable, but actually would it be in the end? And then the last detail that really shows that these fans don't get it is a lot of them, their conclusion when you tell them, actually the biggest teams in the world not only aren't profitable, they lose millions running these teams. You immediately realize the average fan doesn't even have the concept or the paradigm of what venture capital is or what companies with limited liability are. They actually think Cloud9 is Jack Etienne's mom and pop team, where if they're losing money, then logically Jack must be losing. No, he has his venture capital and he gets paid his salary. He's the CEO or whatever title he would have in that particular team. So again, they're so genuinely the idea of like explain it like I'm 5, that would go over the heads of some of these people. Like you're so far from anything approaching a knowledge base of it. Like they just assume for real, by the way. I can tell you when a fan says, get rid of franchising, Los Ratones needs to be in LEC. What they think is that bloody Sam Matthews probably has 500 Lambos because of the league team, because they make it to Worlds every year. Like that's the sort of person we're dealing with, unfortunately, when we're trying to communicate this information. So it's really complicated. We're trying to take what even would be an everyday financial explanation. That's not going to cut it, I'm afraid. They're not going to know what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's true. And trying to boil down these concepts into understandable things, I like to just talk in terms of incentives. I think that, just to be blunt, like people act in accordance with their financial incentives, and that's just the one thing you should always count on. Like I think that's just a harsh reality of this world. And the incentive is, I want to stay in this league. I need to pay money because paying money will get me better players, so I could stay in this league, which will inflate player salaries. And what we realized then was we need to remove this disincentive because it's not a profitable thing. Now, there are other incentives to this day that exist. And by the way, the notion that like professional sports is some ridiculously profitable thing, I want to just set the record straight here for people that don't understand this, because they'll say like, oh, Ballmer sold the LA Clippers for $2 billion. Let's be clear about something. If you Google right now, NBA profitability, there was an ESPN article that came out in 2017 that said half of the NBA teams lost money. NBA. Okay. This is, you look at baseball. It's the same thing, right? Like we're talking about at the core level, we're talking about these teams have limited ways to receive revenue. Sponsorship, ticketing, that doesn't exist in esports, by the way. Ticketing doesn't exist in esports.
Yeah.
Broadcasting revenue, that doesn't exist in esports either, right? And merchandise. And we're not big enough to care about that. So you have sponsorships. Sponsors care about eyes. They care about viewership. So you better be spending money on those players to make you a better team, because that's going to get you viewership. And that's where the incentive is. Pile all that money down into, and then, so we're just over here trying to create some stability. Please don't make us spend all this money. Give us a minimum guarantee, some sort of a rev share, so we don't need to worry about spending all this money all the time, so that we could, live. And that's
By the way, to give you another sports-related example of, like, there isn't even a utopia to get to. It doesn't exist. The funny thing is the utopia word actually means no place. There isn't supposed to be a real concept. It's an idea. What people won't know is, right, so I'll tell you right now, the second layer of stupid bullshit that is ruining all franchising discussions in European League of Legends where Los Ratones play, which is, guess what? All those people, some of them were in the Overwatch League, are now like, hey, Riot, just let me run a homestand. Oh, what's that? I can get 10,000 people in a stadium. Oh my God, this is sick. It's like sports. They're going to make money like sports, right? You know, the example we gave earlier of like the Premier League. They're at the worst team in the Premier League, by the way, that easily can fill like 30,000 people into a stand, paying for that every single week, by the way. And they're still losing money. They're getting 30K every week for any random fucking game. And by the way, those tickets cost like hundreds to thousands of pounds, even for the shittest team out there. The joke is you literally can't buy a ticket. You have to scalp it. Like, people have season tickets for years. So that's a sport where you've already maxed out the fucking ticketing and you're not even anywhere close to it. So the idea in esports where you would actually, if you don't know, like Arnold said, you would lose $1 million running one of these events. Like, you wouldn't make money off the ticket. If anything, you do that because, again, you want to show your sponsor, I have a live activation, I have live eyeballs, I can put on extra details. Maybe I can even do things. I have pop singers there, and I can have other things that are going to bring attention. You're doing that essentially, like as a loss leader, like I'll do this to try and make money elsewhere. So I know, again, if you want to do the contrast to sports, like, first of all, we're a million miles, as you say. We haven't even turned on most of those monetization taps. Like, we haven't got it floating into our seat. And even if we did, it wouldn't actually do anything, by the way, because if anything, the dumbest part about esports, and League is one of the ultimate criminals for this, is without any of the monetization taps turned off, we've already gone beyond insane with the salaries. Like, the numbers of what the salaries are, people don't know. There was people like in football in England didn't make that much like that Bjergsen made in like 1992, mate. And this was like a league that was mega established, one of the biggest in the world. Like, it would be insane to think a player would make millions of dollars in salary. So we've also, because the incentives are all out of whack, we've got insane on the one area that's the costs. And then we haven't been able to get any of the fucking revenue in for the end. That's why I said the teams have spent like 200 million or something, and they made back 80 million or whatever it was, whatever insane delta it was. It was you can't preach that.
So, and the point is, guys, is that the reality of the situation in 2016, 2017, when these conversations were occurring, was that this was completely unsustainable. So when you guys are like, why did we ever do franchising? I promise you that the alternative was much worse. And look, I think some of us who have been in esports for a long time who care less about the professionalization of the scene, like, we can, it's easy to say, well, it would have been more fun without franchising. But here's the thing. Like, if you guys actually care about how much players get paid, player salaries probably 10x what they would have without franchising, maybe even more. Like, because the reality is you will never be able to get those salaries. So if you guys are like, well, I hate franchising, do you hate the players? I think that's the real question, because the players are the ones who benefited the most from this situation. And especially Los Ratones, guys. Do you think Reckless and Nemesis and Crownshot and these people would have, do you think Reckless is a millionaire without franchising? So he can do Los Ratones, so he doesn't have to make money on that to make the thing you guys like. The answer is, of course, no. Right. The reason he's able to, and as far as I know, this is true. Okay. I do not believe Los Ratones was paying their players when they were in tier 2. I don't know about now, but at the very least, they weren't paying them much. So Reckless is living off of his streaming and the millions he's made from playing League of Legends. Those millions do not happen if there is no franchising. So Los Ratones doesn't exist. Period.
I will also just say, just like, I've thought a decent amount about this, just in terms of the way to kind of move towards profitability in this area. And I constantly kind of think, like, okay, is it possible to have a creator org which is going to be a long-term viable path to sustainability? And I come back to, I don't think this org, Los Ratones, or even look at like Optic. Look at what happened when Hector left Optic. And viewership in that situation, right? Like, and the brand in that situation. I think that there needs to be something else that is pulling people towards these specific orgs. And it cannot just simply be oh, Cadrill's streaming or co-streaming this, because in the event Cadrill leaves, what happens?
Yeah, that's
what happens then?
Yep.
How do I sell that to an investor? How do I actually raise capital off of that? It's not possible.
Your entire business is beholden to the popularity of one fringe esports celebrity.
Well, but I mean,
Like,
we already
for
saw
real,
this
right?
happen, with Koi, right? Like when
Yeah,
the
but
co-streaming
also just think,
stops.
but this is what I mean. Just think about how that's beyond unstable. Like, go back and look at the 2023 list of who the top streamers are. See how many of them are the top streamers now, and it is here today, gone tomorrow. Now, it might be a little bit different if you attach yourself to a sport or whatever, but like put it this way: there's also, what if you just get fucking bored? What if you're still popular, but what if you get bored?
That's it, bye, man. That's it, bye.
Yeah, you just get bored of it. It's like, right, I've got millions in the bank. I'm essentially playing a persona at this point. I'm a caricature of myself. I don't have to do this anymore. I don't have to turn on the camera. I can take this money and go out and enjoy it. Yeah, I might do that,
or move
actually,
on to other things like Ibai did. Like he
exactly.
leveraged his League of Legends stuff into celebrity boxing events.
The thing about it though is that with creator orgs, people will say like, oh, look at the viewership that this has, or look how successful this is. First of all, we're not even going to talk about the salaries that are going out and the actual costs of running a team, because that would be too nuanced. But I want you to realize that these creator orgs are successful because the creator is successful, but the creator has overhead that the creator needs to pay now. If you want to sponsor Los Ratones, you're not just, you're sponsoring the team, which means you're sponsoring the players on that team too, which means I got to pay those players. Wouldn't the sponsor and the creator rather just pocket the money himself? Because
it's why the part about Los Ratones that is hilarious, because people have just got so emotionally connected to Cadrill. I've always said this. Could you imagine, once upon a time, you might not know this if you're a modern fan, but Ocelot, Carlos Rodriguez from G2 was one of the biggest streamers in Europe a long time ago. Could you imagine if when he made a team, he did, it was called Gamers 2. If the whole model had been, you play for me to get me into the league for exposure, kid, best thing for you, the ultimate scumbag move, I'm told, in esports, if you do even for fucking someone making like a free graphic. But that's essentially what Cadrill does. And as you say, Harris, in this scenario, the joke is, why the fuck am I sponsoring Los Ratones? Why don't I just sponsor Cadrill? And also, if I'm Cadrill, why don't I also go, yes, thank you, that money goes into my pocket? Like, it's actually an example of where fans bizarrely have zero scrutiny for this. They don't find that at all predatory or exploitative for some bizarre reason. Again, because actually they've sold that team. Puke, this is disgusting, as it's a team of personal friends that are all doing it like the fucking Goonies or something, just to try and let's have an adventure. Like, it's madness, bro. It's actually madness.
Yeah, and there have been many other creator orgs. My position has been, and this isn't a popular position for me, but I have been of the mindset for quite some time that esports, as Richard says, needs to see some of the money and leave it. It needs to go back to its grassroots. Now, I don't know if that means franchising, but I think that some of the best esports moments that I've had, some of the most gaming moments I've had, have been in the locals around my city. And I will tell you that if you look at big rivalries that exist, an actual fandom that attaches is typically to those scenes that are created in those specific regions where you have a community of people that go every single week to go see the same people play and go play against those same people. And I think for the longest time at this point, I've said, it is insane to me that Riot Games, and I know you guys have worked in casting, but it's insane to me that they go ahead and they spend tens of millions of dollars on a studio in Los Angeles where they make every single team come and live, and they exert all that money, and then they say all these teams got to be around the same area. And there's maybe 200 people that show up and they can't actually generate ticketing. And by the way, we're on the topic of ticketing, so we're saying we haven't unlocked that revenue source. I want to be clear: that's not team revenue. That's Riot revenue that we're talking about here. That's Riot Studio. And so really, I think the solution and the long-term solution is to return to the grassroots. This is an online game. I don't know that we need all this, the whole kit and caboodle of the offline studio that costs tens of millions of dollars. Let these teams go play in their own locations. Let them go across wherever they want to represent. Let them interact with those fan bases around those local industries. And then slowly over time, they'll build a grassroots fan base. And that is how it has happened in traditional sports, in every traditional sport.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, we had a thing at E-League where, people probably don't know this. The weekly show where we'd have about 200 people max in the studio watching the games, all those tickets were free. They were free.
Yeah.
We had a dedicated team of people, by the way, giving them away for free. We had a team not selling the tickets, trying to get people to take a free ticket to come and watch an esports event. Why? Because
if you remember, they even had that whole thing where it was almost like a tailgate vibe, where you'd come and you'd get to meet the talent and you'd get food. It was a whole experience.
I mean, up until I started getting the death threats from the FGC guys, a big part of my job at the end of a show, I'd sign off on the TV, and then I'd have to go out and meet everybody in the fucking crowd. I'd have to sign all the shit and do all of this stuff. Obviously, it became just not viable at the point where it wasn't safe. But I mean, we had to call up colleges and community groups. Hey, look, it's not the best teams in the world. It's like Echo Fox versus whoever the fuck it might be. Do you want to come and watch that? Would you for free in a TV studio? You'll be on TV. We had to sell a free ticket essentially, and
that's crazy. Yeah,
and that's where we were. It was easy when it was Cloud9. It was easy, when it was the Brazilians, Luminosity /SK. It was a lot harder when the shit teams were playing. It was a lot harder, not even shit teams, good teams, but just teams that don't have big fan bases. Like Mouse Sports are a very good example of this. It was very hard to sell tickets to those games to the point where they were free, and we even had someone responsible for counting what we call. It's where I learned the term breakage. And I couldn't believe this was a thing. Basically, you have to even oversell the free tickets, right? Because about approximately 30% of people that take a free ticket, because it's free, it has no value to them. I didn't buy it. Who gives a fuck? So if something comes up that day, you just don't go. And so you had to oversell those events by almost 30% to even have a chance to fill them out. That's how hard it is.
That's crazy. Yeah,
people don't know that.
Yeah, no, it's funny to think about. But one of the big problems is we got a little bit too big too fast. I mean, I think that's really what happened. We oversold to venture capital. We oversold what we were. We had a big boost in 2016, 15 by those numbers we were talking about. But the result is too much money came into the scene, and we tried to do a little bit too much, and really the correct answer right now is we need to go back to basics. And that's not something a lot of people in the space want to hear, because it's their job is on the line. And for me personally, think about what 2014, 2015 esports was before lawyers got involved, right? It was a shit show every single day, and my job is to be an attorney. But but that's the truth. Legal budgets need to be cut. And you need to go back and do the thing that actually makes a thing viable in the first place.
So
that's.
This message is sponsored by Raycon, and if you'd like to listen to some of your favorite podcasts, including this one, of course, no doubt, the Four Horsemen, what you're going to want to check out is some of the Raycon earbuds. Right here, I have their Essential Open earbuds. What these are earbuds that don't block out sound. They don't go into your ear canal. Instead, they wrap around your ears and sit on the outside if you don't want anything in there and you still want to hear what's going on around you. But they're extremely secure, so if you work out with these, as I have, I've tested them in the gym myself, no need to worry. They will stay on your ear. They wrap around the outside, and they have a pretty good grip without being uncomfortable. So that's a great way to work out. If you guys want to work out with earbuds that actually go into your ear canal, you can check out their Essential Everyday earbuds. These have active noise cancellation, which works fantastically. I've been on many forms of public transportations, planes, subways, buses, everything with these in, and it works just as well as some of the more the bigger brands, more expensive brands. But Raycon, you get great quality at a lower price because they sell directly to you. So they don't have a lot of costs for in-store expenses and everything like that. So they also have awareness mode, so you can actually just hear what's going on around you. All you have to do is hit the button on the left-hand side. So any way you go, they also have other options, but they have over 3 million customers. The sound quality is just as good as the way more expensive brands, but they're half the price because they're not paying for retail markup. And if you don't like them, they have a 30-day guarantee. So really, what have you got to lose? You can go pick it up. And then if you decide against it, well, there's that 30-day happiness guarantee. So the Essential Open Earbuds are here to help you go for gold, especially if you're watching the Olympics. That's the reference there. Go to buyraycon.com/horsemen open. That's plural, horsemen, MEN, open, to get 15% off. Thanks to Raycon for sponsoring our show.
I want to talk about what happened as a result of the letter we're discussing and the start of franchising. So what's very interesting...
We're still on the letter.
Look, we have to go back because the Rick Fox...
Me and Harris are in like 2030. We're solving the problem. You want to take us back to 2016 one. You're evil.
I do think it's worth talking about what the actual result of this was, because as I alluded to earlier, it was a back and forth because Blizzard was franchising as well. They did end up, obviously, with the franchise slots. So the demand letter was in part met in certain ways, such as the elimination of relegation, the bringing in of actual assets. But what happened, guys, is that the deal was not as good as it could have been. And that doesn't just mean for League of Legends, because remember, Blizzard is in play here as well. So Blizzard and Riot are effectively competing in a way for the attention of these teams during this time period. And the teams themselves are going back and saying to Blizzard, well, Riot promised us this. We'd really like to see this. And then they're going back to Riot and saying, well, Blizzard said they were going to do this for franchising. So this is all part of one massive industry negotiation clusterfuck that is happening. But Rick Fox, crazily enough, probably did some of the biggest damage to the esports business world of any individual person during this period. And his actions actually just continue to resonate to this day because the teams got worse deals. And now we're in a position where, just like we had last episode, the business model is just entirely broken. I
want to make it clear as well. I'm absolutely biased in favor of Rick Fox. Love that guy. So do you want to make
defend
it clear?
him on this one? So
well,
what happened?
I'm a try. That's what I'm just preparing you. I'm a try.
So here's what happened. Here's what happened, guys. So it plays out in some stuff that was public, if you guys remember at the time, which we'll get into, which is Echo Fox goes and they don't sign. They are conspicuously absent from the letter we linked, right? There is no signature line for Echo Fox, but pretty much everybody else is there. And so Riot realizes, where's Echo Fox? So they go to Rick Fox and they say, all right, here's the deal. So if you're not aware, player contracts have to be approved by Riot, basically. They have to say yes, otherwise the players cannot play in the LCS. So if you were a team, and if you are a team, you must submit all of your player contracts to Riot, and they have to approve them. And what Riot said is, hey, Rick, I notice you're not in on this demand letter. So here's the deal. How about you guys? We're just going to say no to all these other teams. And if they do any kind of walkout or they try and unify against us, we are not going to approve any of their player contracts. But if you, continue to play ball with us, you can have whichever players you want. They're basically free agents because we have to approve those contracts. So you, Rick Fox, you can sign anybody you want.
You're the only one in the market, actually.
Yeah, you're the only one. So if Bjergsen wants to play in the LCS, got to sign with you. And so Rick was like, you know what? That sounds great because I'm not the best team. I could get all the best players tomorrow. And so Rick Fox actually single-handedly tanked these conversations across both North America and Europe by holding out and saying, well, I'm not going to deal with you guys because I'm just going to be able to get your players. And so they used Rick Fox. Riot used Rick Fox as a wedge to break the negotiation. And this then resulted in the teams getting mad at Rick Fox, which then played out to no one will scrim Echo Fox. So I'm sure some of you remember way back in 2016, 2017, the players on Echo Fox are complaining, hey, why won't anybody scrim with us? And the answer is because the owners of the LCS teams were so fucking mad at Rick Fox that they prevented Echo Fox from scrimming anyone because they wanted to make his team as bad as possible as punishment, which is really funny. But Rick Fox probably did more damage to team finances because he prevented the one time in history where it may have been possible for all of the teams in the Western world to unify and make real business demands for making those demands.
Yeah.
By the way, this is also why all unions and like group behavior are incredibly hard to manage, because all it takes is one person, any level of meaningful
one double lift
stature to just fuck you over, and then the whole thing collapses, unfortunately. Without going into a big story, same exact thing happened in Counter-Strike Talent at one point in time. Essentially, like 9 out of the 10 biggest tier 1 talents were all willing to join a group and block negotiate, and then one person was like, if I don't get to lead the group, I'm not doing it, and then the whole thing dissolved, and then you never heard about it.
Yeah, I mean, esports unions or associations, as I believe we legally have to refer to them as for American legal purposes, they always fail, and they always fail pretty much on the grounds of kind of, in this instance as well, look, these rules would be great, but you need them way more than I do. So why the fuck am I going to acquiesce and come along for the ride and limit what I can do when right now I can be number one? The Rick Fox thing, to say this, is he felt very uncomfortable getting into bed with these people because his perception was they'd already fucked him over, and so to leverage his strength. I mean, Rick Fox was a net good for League of Legends. Echo Fox was a net good for esports. I remember reporting about it at the time.
We'll disagree there, but okay.
No. You'd be wrong. I mean, like,
I wouldn't be wrong because he did the damage that this whole thing is way worse than anything he did that was good.
You would be wrong.
He fucked team economics forever, effectively.
Let me tell you from my side, and obviously, yes. Look, he used to come on inside the NBA. He was a frequent guest, and I did used to see him a lot around the studio. Let me tell you, he was very good for normie uptake of esports. Very, very good indeed. People don't think about Rick Fox as just some bench warmer at the Lakers. He's more like an actor now. Is kind of how people think about him. I rarely went out in public and had lunch with him talking about esports, and it was just a fucking lineup of people coming to the fucking table asking for his autograph. It was crazy. And so he's a very popular figure, and he came into the league with the best of intentions. And what happened when he got there? He met the cartel. He met Reggie, he met Steve, and he met Jack. And what they did a bunch of fucked up shit to him, man. Like, I mean, there is no getting away from that. They were super worried about how much pull he might have, that they tried to hamstring his team. They recommended players to him that were dog shit, that everybody knew were dog shit, thinking he wouldn't know any better. I mean, then they pulled the visa thing. Right, we've got legit visas now. Right, let's point out that fucking Rick Fox's players don't have legit visas, and that was all just, they were so terrified about being the top dogs and then having external people come in and usurp them that they fucked over this guy that, like, up until this point, he probably would have gone along with this. He would have thought it was a good idea, but these people did not serve him well when he came in. And it's the same people, Monte, that fucked over Renegades because they were like, wow, Chris Badawi has an association with Martin Shkreli, and Martin Shkreli is going to secretly fund Renegades to a position of unassailable financial power.
Ridiculous,
so let's get Travis Gafford to say Badawi was poaching people with no evidence. Not at the same time, we're definitely poaching people, by the way. But no, like, this is what I'm saying. Like, you know, Rick should have signed this, but come on, like,
what one of the first, and obviously I can't, for what it's worth, I have to disclaim ESG is counsel to, a great number of teams in North American and European.
I would say you were the
you
go-to
were not
law
part
firm.
of ESG at this time, though, Harris.
In 2016, I was with H2K. In 2017, I moved to ESG.
There you go.
I will say one thing. We're talking about Rick Fox, and look, I understand that his son or whatever was really big into League of Legends, and then so he would stream it all the time, and it did get some audience, and that was good. We didn't even talk about the H1PL, and that was another thing. And I don't know if you guys remember the H1PL, but I was intimately involved in those negotiations with ESG at the time, and basically teams all went unpaid as a result of that. That was one of the first actual attempts to put together a team-led league, and it failed spectacularly. And there was mismanagement at the top. And I mean, I think you kind of just got to go. There's some articles you can go back and look up on H1PL, but I think that is another one that Rick Fox was intimately involved with that did not turn out too well as well. And so when we're talking about like industry-wide damage.
By the way, this was the H1Z1 league, guys. Just to clarify for those of you who don't know.
Yeah,
which is basically what PUBG was copied from.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny to even talk about that at the time because, like, that's so long ago, no one even knows what H1Z1 is at this point. But that was a big deal at the time because there was a lot of teams that were putting together a league, and he was involved with that as well. And I don't know if you remember, there's a video he did where he talked about the whole collapse of it, and then there was a lot of teams there's articles about teams not getting paid in that situation, and so we talk about kind of industry, what happened. I think Rick Fox,
Kevin Hitt, who we've had on the show, actually, I think was the journalist that blew that one wide open. I'm just to give him his props there. Pretty sure it was Kev.
And you kind of think a little bit about what happened there and ways in which the industry Rick tried to kind of take the industry by storm. And I'm not going to say whether he did a good job or not or whatever. I'll let you guys talk about that. But I will say that there certainly have been a couple of things he's been associated with publicly that have not done spectacularly well.
Yeah, I mean, also remember with Rick, it was like, it was pretty, you knew if you knew, but you probably didn't. Because he obviously, like, if I want a public-facing guy, why don't I get a good-looking actor who's super affable and, like very, very charismatic? But obviously there was a financier group behind him, which he eventually fell out with. And a lot of that reporting has now disappeared from the internet in strange circumstances. But he was very much like, okay, you're going to handle the money, you're going to handle the decisions, and I'll go out and I'll handle the press and do the interviews. And, that relationship worked for a time. And then obviously the people that were making the decisions, I mean, who the fuck would have ever put money in an H1Z1 league? Like, what are we doing? That game was washed before the league even started. It was one of those classic, like, hyper fast evolutions in a genre that you see, where it goes like, oh, hey, we've got DayZ. No one kills zombies in DayZ. You just farm each other. It's almost like this is some sort of, dare I say, battle royale. Oh, well, we're going to make our own. And then Fortnite and PUBG and then genre's dead now. Like no one even treats it as an esport. No one treats it seriously, despite the fact that even as recent as 2 years ago, I was reading articles about how Fortnite was still, it's coming, guys. Don't worry. Look at all the money they're spending on esports. Did anyone get it? Did we even check? Nah, it's all good. So yeah, unfortunately for Rick, I think he was sold down the river by people behind him. And that's how I see it. And to Harris's point about there was a really nice story there. I think, him and his son had bonded over League, know.
Look, I it's not that I think that
I would
Rick
just stand
Fox,
on business for my man. Like, Duncan will tell you this.
Look,
like, I'm loyal to death. Like,
I understand that he, I agree with you that he definitely had reasons to be biased against the scene, but and sure, are some of the members of the endemic teams who are fearful of people coming in who said one thing about welcoming him and then tried to undercut the business. Like, of course, that made him mad. And they are partially responsible for this because obviously Rick Fox may have been more amenable to playing ball with them on these issues had they not, said one thing to his face and then done something very different behind his back. Totally true. By the way,
you know, they all said it to me as well, you know, because this is the thing. People probably don't notice. Like now, I'm kind of out of it. I'm barely even a reporter anymore on esports, frankly. I'm really on the periphery.
You got those 3 awards behind you.
I know. I should have fucking set these on fire now, right? Like, you know what I mean? But like,
I can't win one of those awards, by the way.
Yeah, well,
I can't win one.
Hey, listen,
you don't want to anymore. They used to be cool.
Yeah, they used to be cool, and now they ain't. But I mean, look, obviously, I don't have the same hunger or fire for it. And honestly, there's barely any real esports journalists left. We really are a fucking dying breed. But there was a period of time when, you know, if I called somebody up, I could have a conversation with them. And I talked to all of those dudes. I talked to Jack, and I talked to Steve and Victor, and I talked to all of them about Rick Fox. And, you know, it's relevant to this conversation. I won't get into the minutiae of what was said, but ultimately they were very afraid. They were very afraid of celebrity investors that could pull in more money than they could and had their own fan base coming into League of Legends and pushing them into the periphery. They felt they built this thing, and so why should Rick Fox be the beneficiary? And it's an incredibly short-sighted and negative viewpoint, and not what esports needed. And ultimately, where we're at now is, you know, it's partially their fault. It's the cartel. Yeah. It is partially.
And look, this is all people getting salty at each other for stupid reasons. It's the endemic people getting salty.
I mean, you can imagine how
you can imagine Reginald.
You can imagine Reginald and Rick Fox, right? I mean, you know how that goes down, right? Like
I wonder if you stacked 2 Reginalds on top of each other if he's taller than Rick Fox.
No, I mean, forget that. the fact is, like, what Reggie was worried about is if you stack 2 of his bank balance, is it a taller pile of paper than Rick Fox's? And that's what he was concerned about. And it's like, bro, why don't you listen to what the man has to say? Because you know, for me, I've said this publicly, and again, like I said, I'll not going to change my opinion. At a time when we had terrible ambassadors for esports, Rick Fox was one of the good ones.
I agree with that. Yeah. So anyway, we get into franchise. As a result of this, the teams get a worse deal, not only from Riot, but from Blizzard. I mean, just straight up. Like, this affected both negotiations. And we get into an era where franchising does get investment. And this is when we get the giant esports boom. Players are making millions of dollars. And also, this affected other games. You know, when I was talking about this on Twitter, people are like, but Monte, the Counter-Strike players make more money because they have stickers. I'm like, you motherfuckers realize that because teams got investment due to the franchise leagues, that then Counter-Strike players also got paid more because the teams had more money, and they were trying to increase the value, and also they were trying to create...
The teams that inflated all the salaries in CS literally were the League of Legends teams.
And also they were the teams who were negotiating with Flashpoint, who were negotiating for the Louvre agreement with ESL, who were trying to basically create partially franchise models within CS so that they could increase their valuation further. So to say it had no effect on CS is ridiculous. Secondly, you guys are all like, well, the stickers. It's like, have you ever thought about the player cuts from World Skins? Nobody ever talks about that. I can tell you Fakers made millions of dollars off of World Skins, but it's like you can count sticker money, but you can't count World Skins money for some reason, fans.
Have you ever thought about how the World Skin is the most sold skin of any Riot skin, and they don't replicate that. Yeah. It's just the one team that wins World.
Is it very top heavy?
That skin is the best skin, the best performing skin in a $2 trillion game, and we can't do that for the other team. No.
Yeah. So, but the point is, guys, it may be very top heavy, but to Harris's point, like these skins, Riot has publicly said, I think something like 2 of the top 5 top selling skins ever are World Skins.
Yep.
You know,
it is.
Now they're releasing like the Faker custom Ari skin for $500. Like the point is that nobody ever counts in the cuts and by the way, the players do get cuts of those skins like very directly.
Yes. Well, I mean, that happens. There's no legal way you could cut the player out.
And also, you think Counter-Strike salaries are ridiculous? Like, sure, a good Counter-Strike player. What's a good Counter-Strike player make in the peak? Like maybe $1 million a year. On salary.
On salary, you have to understand,
including stickers.
Yeah, so salaries got not including stickers. The craziest salaries Duncan and I probably heard about, like 50, 60
a month.
I swear, the problem is, like, technically, the crazy outlier is people claim Simple makes like 6 figures a month or something. PC Games Casino, but that's an insane outlier. Then you have Falcons, who are also an outlier. Supposedly, maybe Nico makes like 50, 60K a month. But again, these are like the most extreme.
So,
if you want to go right into the meat of the pack, like a G2 player, I would imagine they make like 30K a month.
Okay, so let's just take that. So let's say like 300,000 to 800,000 a year,
just from base salary. Yeah,
these are the best players in the world, guys. Faker makes 10x that. Okay, like I said earlier, there were fucking LCS support players who I know were making 800K a year from salary. Okay, so
trying so hard not to laugh. Right
no, it's ridiculous.
I mean, the story goes that at one point in time, this is why I clowned on all the idiot players for doing the LCS walkout. At one point in time in the Academy League, there were some players there who were on like 400K or something absurd like that. Which again, think about that would be better than some of the best CS players.
Yeah, so like you can look at this like, and if you compare the best CS players in the world to the top earning League of Legends players of all time, like the fact is people just don't look at them because the top salary players are in China and Korea, so you don't think about
something like insane that like it was like Lemonation was like the highest paid support player in the world at one point. Isn't that a real thing?
I mean, maybe, but like
because he did Cloud9, and then he was on that fucking team. That
he may have gotten a cut of the promotion.
He was on the challenger team and got promoted. I'm sure it was something insane. That Lemonation of all fucking players.
But the point is, guys, is like the salaries you've heard. This is what the fans do. They're like, well, the top salaries, but also then the Western League salaries. Which, by the way, the Western League salaries were higher, but these players are not the top 10 players in their position in the world, and they're still making more money than the best CS players. Like, it's not even a remote comparison, right? But the point is, all of this, even the CS player's salary, was affected by all of the franchising deals because they had to get investment to purchase into the franchising, and then they wanted to expand their empire and get the best CS players and move franchising into Counter-Strike, right? That's why the teams who were franchised, the teams that we work with on Flashpoint, they wanted, well, for the most part. Actually, I know maybe all of them were through even CWL and stuff. But anyway, these were the teams that were investing into Flashpoint to create the team-operated league, right? The team-owned league. So you can't separate this because it was affecting esports that had nothing to do with franchising. And the big winners throughout this entire process were the players. Again, the players were the main beneficiaries of all of this. And so, especially as a fan, you shouldn't hate this because who got paid? The people you like. That's who got paid.
Yeah. I have a couple of thoughts on everything you just said. The first is we're talking about again, to just kind of bring it back to financial incentives. We talk about like world skins. I think it's really important to kind of talk about why it's the case that we don't see more of that. And the answer is because there's an obligation to share that revenue from those skins with players and with teams, right? And the way that Riot might look at it, or the way that another publisher might look at it is, why would I, if I know that there's a consumer who's going to spend a limited amount of money on a microtransaction, why would I want to use that limited amount of money to something that is going to be something I have to share when I could just take that limited amount of money all for myself? And
even if it sells fewer skins, because the total, if I'm selling 50% of a skin, but if I can sell that skin, but if I sell a different skin where I get 100%, but it only sells 2/3 of that skin, I still get more money. So why the fuck am I doing
I make more money? Right.
It's also
or they go to a different skin or something like that.
It's also my broadcast, so I can put commercials for the skin that I make 100% of the money off of on that broadcast.
Right. And so that's kind of, one thing that I think goes without saying that people don't really oftentimes talk about. I don't know. I look back at all this and I say, I think that franchising, I think, to be honest with you, it was a call to stability. Just to kind of wrap up what I was saying before, it was a call to stability. It was a call to really professionalize the scene. I think it accomplished that. I think that the demands that you look back on are paltry. Kind of what you quote in that letter. There's not much there. But the fact is that
$700K a year. And to be fair, they actually ended up getting much more than that. Teams would get $1 to $2 million a year for a while post franchising,
and still made no money.
And still lost money, obviously, of course. Goes without saying.
It's a sports business. Teams lose money, and that's just how it is. Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully that changes.
Guys, I spent years paying too much for wireless coverage, especially because I've switched over to using a lot of open Wi-Fi networks when I'm out and about, whether I'm at a cafe or restaurant or the airport. I mean, you're probably on Wi-Fi all the time. So why are you paying a ton for your wireless bill when you can have a choice like Mint Mobile where you can drastically reduce costs? Not only that, but it's the premium wireless you expect. It has unlimited talk, text, and data, but at a fraction of what others charge. And it's also on the nation's largest wireless network, but it is so much cheaper. They also have a 7-day money-back guarantee and customer satisfaction ratings in the mid-90s. So Mint makes it easy to try it and see why people don't go back. You can go ahead and try it for those 7 days. Make sure it's working for you in your area and save a ton of money. All you have to do is you bring your existing phone over to Mint Mobile, and for a limited time, you get up to 50% off 3, 6, or 12-month plans of unlimited premium wireless. It's super easy to activate. You just download the app, and in most phones like mine have eSIMs these days, so I got it up and running in probably less than 10 minutes in total, and I was saving a massive amount of money. If you are ready to stop paying more than you have to, new customers can make the switch today, and for a limited time, get unlimited premium wireless for just $15 a month. Switch now at mintmobile.com/Four Horsemen. That's FOURHORSEMEN, plural, men. That's mintmobile.com/Four Horsemen. An upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12 months plan required. It's equivalent of $15 a month. Taxes and fees extra. Initial term only. Over 50 gigabytes may slow when the network is busy. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. Additional terms apply. See mintmobile.com.
Well, and then we get to I want to change it now to the current conversation, because all of this is
Are we going to talk about the Wooloo article? Because this is where me and Duncan are going to come in.
Yeah. Yes. So this is the current argument. So the current argument is this. Well, we should, because Los Ratones has good numbers, and I'm a fan of Los Ratones, we should get rid of franchising. But you have to remember, guys, that when they franchised, they sold these slots in EU. I believe it was for 10 million, and LCS it was for 12. And certainly the value of LCS slots has gone way down. Teams are selling them back to Riot for 6. But LEC, where Los Ratones plays, is still selling slots recently for 25 million, which is more than double what those slots cost.
Even worse, a lot of people miss this detail. If you ever go and read the slots that were sold for the mega box like that, essentially the joke is someone willingly did an Overwatch League buy-in, but years later to this league, most of them weren't even for 100% the slot, mate.
Yep.
Most of them were like, you buy the majority, but then whether it's an Astralis or whoever,
Misfits, I still think owns part of their slot.
A bunch of them kept a tiny percent because they were on some like, listen, maybe it really does 100x and we want a tiny little bit. So that's also why it's even more egregious than just occasional should buy in. Like these other teams had to just buy part of the slot even.
Right. And we'll get into the financials of it. But if you guys want to talk about Wooloo's article first and look, he's basically, as far as I can tell, farming fan opinions for views.
Yeah, look, so let's just get into all of this, right? Like, I've got a weird history with that publication, Sheep, fucking whatever, because they have obviously worked with a guy that essentially plagiarized my work, and has done so on their platform.
I think the hilarity is he's even an editor for them or something.
Yeah,
which is
amazing. I've talked to the editorial team privately and said, look, whatever, man, who gives a fuck? But just be careful, because plagiarists, it's not a one-time thing. It's like cheating on your wife. Once you've crossed the threshold and gone, shit, get away with that. Nobody knows. Wicked. I'll just do that all the time. That's fucking sick. And that's generally my experience. I worked as an editor for a long, long time. I had to discipline staff over plagiarizing stuff, stealing photos, whatever it might be, So I want to get that out front. But I'm also going to say, I don't think Wooloo isn't entitled to an opinion on this. I think the thing you have to remember about editorial and op-eds is that ultimately any old dickhead can write an article saying this is what I think. The value is do you have enough fans to care? Does an audience give a shit about your opinion? And I would imagine that Wooloo, for good or ill, has enough fans. I will also say, knowing the man, not knowing the man, I don't want to oversell it, but just knowing his personality archetype, he is unfortunately somebody that is beholden to the notion of popularity. This is somebody who's on record saying, I didn't want to release stories that might upset people, in the space.
Including the people he's reporting on.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, so it's, I don't want to upset players by releasing their salaries, and I don't want to, it's like, bro, just fucking say you want to, journalism is basically like it's they say what is it, politics is Hollywood for ugly people, right? Well, it's like journalism sort of is that now, and you just want to be at the party. You just want to be at the table. Which is mad,
because think about the legendary Orwell quote. It's like journalism is publishing what other people don't want printed. Everything else is just public relations. And essentially, he's just immediately failed the journalism test.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. But also doesn't care, and his fan base doesn't care, because his fan base secretly all want the same thing, and that is they want to be at the table too. They want to be in a room with Faker, and they want to be in a room with all these players and talking to them. So unfortunately, yes, this is an editorial that doesn't have a lot of thought put into it, and it is designed ultimately to serve as a means to make the author more popular. Now, that being said, I've read the article. It's terrible, like all of Wooloo's articles. He is not a gifted writer. And again, I say that with all love and due deference, and I hope people respect my opinion. I think I've earned the right to express it with 20 years in the business. He's not a gifted writer, and I have to say his points aren't even particularly well constructed. I don't really understand. So for instance, he says here, it has been admitted from the beginning that closed leagues were introduced for financial reasons, but while closed leagues increase profits, they reduce fan welfare, as observed in a study by Claflin University on traditional sports, right? And then he cites this study that reeks of, I Googled, are there any studies that say franchising is bad for fans? This was a study that was published in 2012. It's in the Journal of Economics in Finance. And ultimately, if you look at the abstract, what it says is that when you create franchised leagues, there is the money doesn't circulate as well. You don't get as much value for money, essentially, as if you're a fan. And I don't even know in what way that would be.
Richard, can I ask you a question on that? Because admittedly, I looked at this briefly when you guys mentioned it before, but I haven't spent a lot of time dissecting this article. It's just I have other things.
I don't blame you.
But I want to ask, because you just said something and it kind of stuck with me. You said that from the beginning, and I'm just trying to remember what you said. From the beginning, profitability was the reason for franchising, not fan welfare.
Yes.
But the way I look at it is, ultimately, this is an entertainment business. And if these businesses are not profitable, if they go belly up, then
how
the
does
fans
that benefit
have
the fans? You see, ask the TSM fans how that's benefited them. Just go ask them.
Yeah. This is the quintessential balance in every sport, right? You don't want the sport to be taken out of the hands of the fans and made inaccessible, so only a bunch of fat cats can go and attend a live game. There's an interesting YouTube video that's been recommended to a lot of people right now, talking, for instance, about how when you go to a sports ground in America and you pay $20 for a hot dog, there are laws that are meant to prevent that, and these laws are not being enforced. And we've just forgotten that it used to be your right as an American to go and get a beer and a hot dog and sit in the stands and watch a ball game all for under $40, right? Like, that used to be what you had. And so it's kind of interesting, because what we've got in esports ultimately is this refusal to impose upon the fan. That's how I see it. I think the fans are the first problem in the pyramid.
They pay 50 cents per fan.
Yes,
on
they
esports
don't pay
stuff.
anything. So to even use sports when we know the average sports fan per year pays $50 on the sport he enjoys, and that's on average. That's everyone who never attends a game, never buys a jersey, is aggregated out by the regular guy who buys a jersey every season and attends every game with a season ticket. And so when you realize that actually it's less than 5 for an esports fan, and think about how niche it is, it doesn't scale. So to use that study is terrible. But then also to talk about fan welfare. Well, what is it the fan isn't getting from current esports? The broadcast is free. It's not even a shitty 360 version of the broadcast. It's full 4K if you want it on YouTube for free all of the time, every single game. You I would love that as a football fan. I would love that as an MMA fan. I have to pay every year just to have a fucking UFC, just have a UFC universe. That's like $150 a year, and I still have to pay pay-per-view if I want to watch the events live. Can wait 48 hours and watch them after. But so what the fuck?
I pay $200 a year living abroad for NFL.
Right.
The argument.
Yeah, sorry.
The argument I think is that. Well, I mean, look, I'm not going to make his argument for him, but and I disagree with him. But he would say there's no story, that you don't get the story. And when I would retort by that, because you don't get the relegation story where the team comes up from nothing and it's retort that Aston Villa was promoted recently. They're spending 96% of their salary on players. 96% of their revenue is being spent on players. Do you think that is sustainable? Do you think that's going to work in the long term? I'll tell you what's going to happen. That team is going to take on debt. They're going to need to finance themselves.
Because you have to pay all the people who work for you.
Guess who they're taking that debt from? Those same people you complain about on Twitter, by the way. That's who they're taking that debt from.
Absolutely.
Yeah, is that good for your welfare? You want that to happen too?
I mean, a more an even better example, because you're right, Aston Villa had a net spend that was up there with Manchester City. But if you look at what's happening with Forest have one of the highest net spends, and they are just above the relegation zone. There's 3 teams in the relegation zone, and they are the 4th from bottom team. If they get relegated, it's an absolute disaster for them. And so it's like, to get back to Wooloo's argument, he says that, look, you can increase profits by closing off the league, reducing fan welfare, a very nebulous term he hasn't clarified, probably doesn't even understand, if I'm being real about it. And then it goes on. The next sentence is, this is a choice that can be made. But in a young sector such as esports, no money can be generated without fans. What he is failing to understand is we have had the fans. We have had numbers. Do you remember how there would be an article written every 3 months about how viewership at TI was bigger than the Super Bowl, or fucking Worlds broke the Super Bowl? It was always the fucking Super Bowl for some reason, or the World Cup, and it's like, we've got the fans. We can't generate money with the fucking fans, bro. The whole point of franchising was to try and hermetically seal an environment where profit was actually possible, because the fans don't pay any money. So, I mean, the premise at the heart of his article is completely flawed. As I said, you can read the whole thing. Nowhere does he go into net fan spend, which is a pretty important fucking part of the paradigm, right? I mean, how much you're willing to take out your pocket and give to me if I run an esports team. And it turns out not very fucking much at all. Meanwhile, I'll put my hand in my pocket for a Blitzcrank fucking skin. None of that gets disseminated to esports, because, you see, we don't view... We think about giving money to a sports franchise we like in a completely different way than we do with DLC and microtransactions. They've broken our brain to trick us in a way that the other one hasn't. And that's the whole problem we've got in esports right now. Game developers can enjoy the luxury of this on the right hand, while esports fucking teams are getting fucked with the bullshit on the left hand. And this article completely glosses over that reality.
I'll say, I think also one side note that I'll kind of just make here is that I worked very closely with a Brooklyn bar. It was called Brookland. It was probably my favorite bar. It's a land bar that existed, but like I said, we had locals all the time. Interestingly enough, when I would go to a bar, what does a bar do to make money? It sells beer. It sells alcohol, right? That's how a bar makes money. When we would have tournaments, because we would have regular events, you had to program the bar. Consistently, the people that spent the least amount of money, the fans that spent the least amount of money, League of Legends, number one. Second was actually Ultimate. Ultimate did not spend a lot of money either. Yeah. You know who spent a ton of money at these places? Melee. Melee spent a ton of money. When you threw a Melee event, those people got fucking shit-faced every single time. And
one time.
We call it the mango effect.
He was carrying knives at the bar top. Yeah.
I mean, I've been to Brookland and got so fucking lit up in there. I had a huge I had a really bad meltdown in Brookland. So witnessed by many.
You've been to Brookland?
Oh yeah, back in the day. Yeah. I mean, that was like it only just closed last year, right? So I think I went there when the Call of Duty finals were happening. We were up in Flatbush, which that was where the Call of Duty finals were. And then we ended up in Bushwick, I'm pretty sure. And we went, that's how I remember it. But man, I was fucked up. So
yeah, it's a fun place. They had a cool stage in the back.
Yeah, they did.
That's kind of what I envision when I think of, okay, well, I mean, I've said this a million times. Why can't you just have a team that plays its home games from there and allow that team to sell tickets to that back area? At that point, they're monetizing their own ticketing revenue without needing to share it with a publisher who owns that stadium. Let that team sell concessions. Let them sell that beer. At that point, you have all these teams that spend money on these offices, this big training facility with a huge office. No, let these kids that play video games play in a fucking bar, and we'll monetize the fuck out of a bar like it's a regular bar. And we'll sell alcohol. That's kind of that's a return to grassroots.
Yeah, right.
That's kind of how I look at it.
So
yeah.
I mean, when we look at this though, and to reframe it, I mean, we're all talking about ways to generate revenue, but the thing that people miss in all of these conversations is, okay, so let's run the mental exercise. We'll get into the mechanics of dissolving this with Harris legally, because that's impossible.
I still want to talk about the Wooloo article, by the way.
What I'm saying is
Thorin go.
Right.
I get my digs in. Duncan's got to get his. So.
Right. So first of all, if people don't know what he's describing about with the bar setting there, that's actually a perfect analogy for why it makes no sense to cater to fans at this point in esports. They're not the people raising the money. They're not the people spending the money. They're just the people profiting from that money being spent, but indirectly even. They're just watching for free. And then from the peanut gallery going, spend more, you fucking idiot, and just take all the guardrails down. So why the fuck would I listen to you moron? That's why this article is dog shit, because the entire thing is, hey, fans who are the only people reading this, don't you think everything should be done the way you want it to be? Because reasons. There's not even any actual points made. There's fuck all data actually used to solidify points.
Shocking lack of data, by the way.
He even does the classic thing where he'll bring up a piece of data to say, something going on here, then he'll present a solution, zero data attached.
Yep.
Oh, no studies for that is the fuck face. Almost like you don't know what you're talking about. Also, the point I was going to make was, think about how many businesses everyone bitches and complains about the cost of the concession stand things. So if you go, most famously, if you go to the cinema, people go, the fucking popcorn costs like £10. You do know that's the only thing they make any money off in the cinema. You go, but that doesn't make sense to them because they made billions of dollars off the Avatar. The cinema didn't. The cinema, by the way, is an essential location, giant venue, loads of people hired, think about how giant a fucking cinema studio thing is, and then you have all the extra. If you don't know, they literally make the money off the overpriced Coca-Colas and the fucking popcorn. That's what you make the money off. Similarly, you go to a concert, you go to a sports game, they have to sell the fucking hot dog for £10. You would literally make fuck all otherwise, and those are also high ticket. Those are way higher ticket than a fucking cinema. Those are high ticket events you're attending, hundreds of dollars, thousands. So okay, that's again, we'll rewind and we'll go into his article. His article is fucking shit from beginning to end. Like, it says it's a 10-minute read. It feels like it was a 10-minute write, mate, including all fucking, like, reviewing editorialization and then hitting send on the fucking button. I'll just run briefly through it as I made some notes. It starts, terrible article, by the way. You always start an op-ed or an article with a brief summary of what I'm going to talk about and why he doesn't. He just dives straight.
He doesn't know what a nut graph is.
He doesn't know journalism, Richard. He thinks he's like chapter 1 of the Wooloo story. There I was in the bar. She looked at me. I looked at her. Are you kidding? I said, some shite like that. He's just not. The joke is he's already writing the movie of him as a journalist, even though he hasn't done the journalism. So the article starts with a really interesting story. It starts with a story about how EULCS used to be amazing when Expeke left the league and he went and formed his own team called Origin. Then he came qualified back into the league. And what do you know? In the next split, he was playing his old team in the final. He's clearly trying to establish here. This is the amazing, like, rivalries you can have. This is how people can go and through merit earn their way back into the league. And he just presents that. This is the whole point made, by the way, it just wasn't that good. Now, here's what's mental about that. For that to make any sense at all, you've just said you had a final between Fnatic and Origin. Right, where's Origin now, mate? Fnatic's still around. One of the teams that did the franchise. Where's Origin at, homie? Origin was later brought back as a rebrand by Astralis. No connection really to the original one. And now it doesn't even exist at all anyway. That spot was sold. If you don't know, his example of like, and then Expeke can go away. Yeah, do you know how much money they were getting paid? Very little at the beginning because it was like they had to get a bunch of people. I believe their mum ran it, like a Spanish fucking housewife ran this whole company. Famously, they did what I said earlier, where you mega overperform relative to your spend because you are Expeke, you are so. You are like fucking, by the way, you were like essentially top 2 to 3 talents in every role, just choosing to play in Challenger for this cool reason because there was nothing established at the time and there wasn't that much money anyway in European esports. Then you get back and you have, like he says, the success you're second in EULCS and you go to Worlds and you make top 4. What he doesn't bother mentioning is something like a year and a half later, they've all left the team. They left the team of their own fucking mother running the squad, for fuck's sake. Do you know how bad it has to be for you to go, listen, Mum, I'm out. See ya. Fucking hell, homie. Also, and then the team was run into the ground and became one of the most notorious memes in the history of European League of Legends. Yep. But that isn't mentioned here because this guy wasn't there. He doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about.
Also, you're not even thinking about the viewership, Thorin, which is like, guys, viewership of EULCS at this time was not good. So you talk about this cool story, but people weren't watching it, by the way, compared to LCS. This is why at the time of franchising, all the European teams, including G2, applied for North American franchising.
Yes. It's what we wanted to do too, actually. It's true.
I mean, keep in mind.
He's bigging up this approach, but it didn't even work for Origin. One of the best case scenarios he's given. Yeah. Then let's go on to the next part where he does the whole thing about, he literally says some sentence along the lines of like, novelty in matchups is what drives growth, right? First of all, the idea that's some sort of sustainable thing. You are fucking mental. You are as bad as those, like, what is it, Keynesian economics guys, where it's like, if we just have infinite growth, the system works and doesn't actually destroy all human life and labor. So essentially, by your logic, we should have constant turnover of teams in the league. How the fuck are we ever going to make these teams financially work, by the way? Again, you know what? I'll give you a deal, Wooloo. We can have this. Everyone just has to make 15,000 euros a year salary. If you can get all your friends among those players that you get to meet in the cocktail party after the LEC that Richard talked about, tell them if they're willing to play for $15,000 a year, I've seen it work. You can have an esports thing like that and everyone can make profit. We can have a great time. You can all keep watching for free, right? That is, first of all, an absurd statement on its surface. And then he says that these novelty matchups are the main driver, right? Here's the problem with that. You even put the fucking word novel in there, you cretin. You can't do that forever. Do you know what would happen if Los Ratones plays for the next 10 years? They wouldn't get the same viewership as they did for the novelty of, oh my God, Los Ratones is in LEC versus. What's going on? They've lost the games and now they won them. That would get old like every other team would within a few splits. That's not even guaranteed viewership. Then I'll just put it out there. Monte hasn't even watched the games in years, right? Think about this, Monte. Could you guess in the LCK which the biggest matchups are? Do you imagine, Monte, it's T1 versus DN Supers, because who were they? They're a rebranded team. Do you imagine it's T1 versus Nongshim? They were only even around like 6-7 years. No. Every single year, it was T1 versus KT when they were the biggest matchup. Now it's T1 versus Gen G. If I'm going to go to the LPL, I'm almost certain it'll be the same thing. It will be the two biggest dogs playing. It's not even true. What he says isn't even true. He just cherry picked an example that made no sense at all. And again, it did actually contain a logical fallacy, which is, by his logic, just have infinite novelty and that will cause growth.
No, here's the best part, Duncan. The article says as well, the very opening thing, because you know how when you do an op-ed, obviously you have to have a little enticing subheader to I might read this. Riot Games have sold LEC spots for 8 to 10.5 million. Should they pay it back?
I know. I love that.
By the way, it's also the value of
no
those
reason
slots.
given.
Yeah.
The value of those slots has risen to, I mean, teams were getting paid 30 million, maybe 40 million.
Yep.
Now they're getting, even KC paid, 25 million not that long ago
I'm
for a
like
slot.
Riot's biggest all-time hater, and the answer to that is unequivocally no.
Oh, no, by the way, easily no. But the joke is that would be the biggest mistake in the history of esports, paying back the franchise fees. You're fucking mind. You lunatic. I just said it. My analogy always is this. It's like I played you at poker, beat you, and you went, but I want to play poker, so can I have my money back? No.
Let's talk about what dissolving the league would actually take with Harris here. Because,
there's one last thing as well. The one last thing that he then frames his article around to end on a high, because he's obviously playing to the actual audience, which are the fans who want to see Los Ratones. This might be the stupidest point I think I've ever seen. Bear in mind, we've just had a lengthy discussion about how incredibly difficult it is to monetize fans. By the way, even in real sports, but in esports, even more so. He actually attempts to anchor the whole article around the idea that Los Ratones joining the league brought back old fans, and he actually talks about how it rekindled feelings in them of what it was like to watch EULs. Right? How the fuck does that make anyone any money? Can someone explain that to me? Am I missing something?
How does he even know that though?
The joke is a bozo like him, who, get ready for the irony of this, works in a media landscape where literal clicks and exposure are how he makes his living, doesn't understand how hundreds of thousands of views, literally his whole fucking entire business model, doesn't turn into millions of dollars. Hence why he isn't making millions of fucking dollars. So, when people go, just monetize it, just get sponsors, stop using the fucking word just for things that are at the moment borderline impossible, please. Again, that's like me saying, you know what, actually, my entire idea does work. I just have to invent a perpetual motion machine. But as soon as I've done that, it'll probably all be sorted. So I'll just get off my ass, pull my finger out.
I just need to go get sponsors and talk to the same sponsors who just didn't want to give me money 10 years ago when we were just talking about the same thing. Don't they know that Los Ratones is rekindling feelings in me, though? Feelings. By the way, feelings, the most quantifiable business fucking unit of all time, of course.
Also, the feelings of the fans have never translated for teams into dollars, really. That's the problem. But even if we play with this model, okay, so what would it take to dissolve franchising? Remember, Riot can't just say they have real partnership, legally binding contracts with teams now, and there is a precedent of these slots having X value. If they dissolve the slots, guys, they will be sued. That's what's going to happen. And the thing is,
they've made commitments.
And so they can't do it. And even if they did do it, remember, back to the first part of this conversation, when they put up the franchise sale, what did they want to do? They wanted to bring in bigger partners. So they did.
Stability.
They wanted to bring in really big guns to, be with the teams. You know what that means? They're dealing with partners who maybe make more money than Riot. Okay? You want to go fuck with SK Telecom? They're a much bigger company than Riot. They now have partners that
and you'd have to fight that battle in Korea, Monte. You wouldn't be fighting it in America necessarily, right? So good luck going into a Korean court and going, I'm just fucking your company over lol.
Yeah, you want to fight a bunch of billionaire investors? You want to fight a bunch of professional sports teams? You don't. You can't win that, especially when they are all allied against you. And especially when you sign deals and there's a precedent for the value of this asset. I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, Harris, but if they were to take this away, it seems like a pretty slam dunk legal case.
I don't think that they can't take it away.
That's what I'm saying.
Taking anything away, right? There's an element of maybe some teams don't want to be involved with the league anymore. And at that point, maybe there's an exit.
By the way, he also references that. He brings up the LCS example of where teams were willing to take a buyout or there was just a free slot. So in other words, not at all applicable to the LEC, where there's already all the teams. People don't want to sell, and they know if they keep the league closed, they can sell for 20. So a totally spurious example. That aside from the fact but LCS, that's about that all the point that made.
Right. No, I mean, the fact of the matter is you can't just take something away from somebody. You got to give them something. Yep. And if you don't want to I don't need to play ball with you. I don't need to play ball with you. Why do I need to?
By the way, Harris, I'm not joking. The fans do think they're ahead of you on this one. They really do believe, like he just said, just give them all the money back. That's actually the real just. That might be the craziest use of the just. Yeah. So just give them like 10, 15, 20, whatever it is. Just give them all the money back. Essentially, they think this is how the esports works, Harris. LEC is running, and it's actually just a bunch of kids upstairs, and they've been trading Pokemon cards, and they've been playing Pogs, and they're doing all that shit with all the fucking... And then what happens is the mum comes in and goes, oh, come on, Billy can't just have them all. Give him back. Give him back his fucking Pokemon card. Yeah. Listen, your mum's going to get in so much trouble. Just give it all back. That's what they think Riot can do, because what they've forgotten in this scenario, something Riot themselves forget, is you're only God inside of the video game, dickhead, where you have the IP rights. In the real world, when there's hundreds of millions of dollars of money, real world money flying around, you aren't God anymore, and you don't actually have the rights to do whatever you want with that money. Like, you have to answer before something called a higher power in that analogy.
And as we said, okay, so in a theoretical example, again, nobody wants to sell an LEC, so you would have to pay a premium to get somebody to give up their spot to then make a guest slot like we have in the LCS. Or you buy out the whole league. Okay, so let's say $20 million a slot. Okay, you're in $200 million. What is the mechanism where doing this for Los Ratones' viewership? What is the profit mechanism that results? Okay, so we do that. Los Ratones, we give them, they're in the league now. But how does the Los Ratones viewership translate into money? Because again, as Harris said, there's no media rights deals. Those are gone. And even those in the peak of Overwatch were like $100 million.
Well, Richard actually was reporting on a Riot deal for $200 million with MLB.
Yeah, MLB.
It was the Monte.
They couldn't bring that to fruition either.
Yeah, and that
was in the peak.
Yep. So tell me how Riot, if they pay the teams $200 million, let's just say they pay them back their original investment, $10 million. I think that's unlikely. It's $100 million. How do they make $100 million from Los Ratones? Keep in mind that part of the disaster that's happening with
also,
LEC...
why am I accepting that if I paid $30 million?
Sure.
I'll have 10 back.
But I'm just saying, let's spitball it. Let's just say it happens. How do I make $100 million back on Los Ratones when also all of the viewership is on Cadrill's stream? 90% of the viewership is on Cadrill. How the fuck do I make this money? How do I sell sponsorships? Because again, co-streaming, you may like it. It's not good for sponsors because Cadrill is talking while they're talking about the Red Bull Baron power play. Yep. The sponsors are not getting the value. If 90% of the viewership is with Cadrill or 80% or whatever it is, lowers the value of sponsorships I can get on the league. I don't have a media rights deal. I don't have tickets. How do I get my $100 million back? So you guys have to understand, it doesn't matter if the viewership goes up because there isn't a method for them to effectively profit off of bringing Los Ratones into the league.
I mean, let's also be real. Like, does anyone think this is anything other than a flash in the pan? It's not even
old after a while.
I don't even get why it's guaranteed that you get these views forever. Yeah. Why do you? If the whole thing is like it's a band of players that have come together, it was a stream team, and no one expected that doesn't work. Eventually, that stops work. Like, surely
this has been done before, guys.
Let's say they became a good team.
Correct. And
do you guys remember Delta Fox? Yeah. We're talking about Rick Fox earlier. Yeah. What happened to that?
Yeah. Like, I'm telling you, here's how this goes on a long enough time scale. I mean, and when I say long in esports, you are talking a year or two. Either Cadrill's going to get bored, stop streaming the games, doesn't want to support the team because he's not been airlifted into the league, or some of these players are going to catch feelings because they want to win games, and so all of a sudden the competitive element comes in, and so they're going to cut some of the more popular but worse players from the team. Suddenly, it's not a unique value proposition anymore. It's any other team. So what happens then, right? Well, no one gives a fuck. As soon as you start stripping what makes it popular and unique away from it, then the viewership will go down. And ultimately as well, by the way, like, what if Cadrill, let's say, wakes up tomorrow, has a big stretch, sits down at his computer and says, you know what, like, League just doesn't do it for me anymore, actually. But what if I made a stream team in another game? What if I picked up a bunch of washed CS pros? People would fucking go nuts for that, right? What if I did that? All right, okay, let's do that then. Sorry, guys, I wasn't paying you anyway, but if you want to still stay together, I'll even let you use the Los Ratones name, but I'm over here doing this thing. That's it. It's game over, right?
Do you remember? There was an event that used to be held called the Tyler One Invitational.
Yep.
Mhm.
There
I don't know
you
if you
go.
guys remember
Great
that.
example, actually. Good pull. Love that.
Right. That had a bunch of viewership the first year they did that. They had Delta Fox was playing in that team, or I don't know if it was called Delta Fox at that point, but it was like who was on that team? Dyrus was on that team. Shifter was on the team.
Cutie
A
Pie,
bunch of
maybe,
streamers.
bunch of people.
Yeah, Cutie Pie. Yeah, a bunch of streamers were on that team. First year they did that, viewership was astronomical. Astronomical. Guess what? They did it years 2. Didn't repeat it. Year 3, I don't think it even came close. Right? Like, and it just became a nothing, and they stopped doing it. Like, who's to say you're gonna redo the entire league structure, bring us back to the complete pre-organization, pre-professionalization world where teams had all these issues and really emulating the English Premier League, a league in which there's a massive amount of debt, no teams make any money. We're going to do that because there's 400,000 viewers on an event once. Like,
well,
yeah.
it's
what
also
are you
that
talking about? What are you fucking talking about?
Yeah, the fans aren't even articulating why they're actually mad. The reason why fans are mad at franchising is because Riot themselves created a bad system. To your point about business incentives earlier, Harris, like the problem is that being a mid to bad team at League of Legends is a better business than being a good team right now. Because Riot has said, we are paying you X amount of money. There isn't, as we've discussed at length, a mechanism for teams to make more money by having good performance other than winning worlds, which is, by the way, impossible if you are not Korean or Chinese. So you could just fucking forget that in LEC. So because that's how you get world skins, which is how you actually get more money and probably, additional sponsorship. But even T1 has said that they are struggling financially because they have to pay all their players such an outrageous amount of money. Faker's making like $6 or $8 million a year. And even they can't, kind of jump over the hurdle of profitability.
Here's the thing as well, though, Monty. Like, what does it say about all the other legacy teams that their biggest viewership, their best day is when they play this fucking shit upstart streamer team?
No, it's a bad look. But that's the whole point, is that people are mad for the following reason. One, Cadril can't get $20 million to buy into LEC. Why can't
if he got $20 million, he wouldn't spend it on this shit.
No, he even said that.
He quite literally said
that.
He said something like, if I found a giant bag of money on my doorstep that had the money, I wouldn't buy it. But anyway, obviously, because he loses fucking money, that's all problem.
But also, there aren't investors who are going to invest based on the bad business model that is known now, and there's no hype about infinite growth. So that's gone. Like so he can't get in via that way. But what people are mad about are the teams that are just coasting. But Riot made a bad system where coasting is the best way to actually squeak out some level of profitability. And you see that not only in LEC, but in LCS. You see it. That's why a bunch of players this year down to the 65K minimum payment.
Bro, Fnatic. They're the ultimate fucking coasters compared to what they used to be. Across the board in esports. I don't know if you saw as well. There was this fucking headline. It was on Sky Sports. They probably leaked it themselves. But it was like, Fnatic are looking to potentially sell. Valuation of it. It was some insane valuation for 100 mil or something, wasn't it? Like, are you fucking dizzy? No one's buying Fnatic. This Fnatic for that. I wouldn't pay a mil to have the rights to Fnatic. It's a clown fiesta now.
So like, if you guys, what I think is the fans are just mad because the product's boring, right? But the product is boring because the business incentives don't match with performance within the game, either from a content creation perspective and a viewership perspective, or from a competitive success perspective. And that is distinctly the fault of Riot, who created a partnership system that rewards, I wouldn't even say mediocrity. It actually just rewards straight up being bad. Just straight up rewards being bad. It straight up rewards spending no money to make content and no money on your players. That's what it rewards right now. And people are, I think, justifiably optimizing for that. Like, how can you blame them? But you're mad. I mean, so you take it out on franchising. You should take it out on the way franchising was done. That's the problem.
We are a long way from the days of having figureheads like Ocelot and people like that coming out publicly and saying all that matters is the trophy. Like, we don't give a fuck about how much we have to spend. We want to win. And that's what we do here. I don't really see a lot of esports orgs that embody that ethos, frankly. Like, with the exception of Falcons that are spending by and large and underperforming, but they've got an unlimited pot of gold, so who gives a fuck? The only org I would say probably across the board that's doing really well in terms of like spend to output is probably Vitality. I think they're right up there right now.
Team Liquid's doing fine.
In Liquid, yeah, I think, and you know, to a lesser extent Na'Vi, but like it's no surprise these are the orgs that actually went out and grabbed the fucking balls of the tournament organizers and said, you need to start paying us appearance fees. That's how they got around franchising.
Liquid also created a bunch of other businesses.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really what I think that's what it really comes down to. A lot of these teams are able to, look, it's hard for me to talk too much about it because I have to be wary of attorney-client, but I think a lot of it is, a lot of people view these teams as marketing for other products they're creating at this point.
Yep.
And I think that, if I were to go ahead and just look at Blitz, for example, right? Like TSM at a certain point existed to serve Blitz, right? And Blitz was the product, and that's their response to not having a profitable ecosystem. Is okay. Well, then I'm just going to do a different business, and I'm going to use this business to promote that business because you're not giving me a system here that's going to make money on its own. And that's really what it comes down to, Monte. At the end of the day, is that we don't have a stable ecosystem. That years later, and by the way, I'm just going to say this. I am so sick and tired of, we need to have 3 splits, or we need a best of 3 series, or we need a best of 1 series with a tiebreaker, or, I don't care about all that shit. Like, I know it's just me personally. The business isn't exciting. The reason this isn't exciting is very simple. There's no investment into the scene. There's no hype into the scene to make it exciting. People are indeed coasting. Why? Because it's not profitable to not coast. How do we make it profitable? That's the question. How do you make a league profitable? And so if you could answer that question, please, that's what we'll need to do. And unfortunately, I don't know that we've gotten that answer. And I think that there's a reality here, which is, in my opinion, it's a ceding of control by tournament organizers, Riot in particular, to really say, okay, guys, like let's go back to the grassroots here. Let's take this back. Maybe we could do franchising in a bit of a different way. Maybe we can, incentivize real team participation and fandom. I'll tell you, I've told this story before, but I don't want to go off on a tangent. But H2K 2016 spring, our biggest source of fandom was Greece. It was Greece. Right? We had Forgiven. Yeah. Forgiven was an all-star. He was the best, in my opinion, and it's still, in my opinion, one of the best mechanically gifted AD carries I've ever seen. We kicked him off the team going into the summer split. We brought on Freeze at that point. 50% of our viewership went away instantly. Yep. All the Greek fans left us. What does that tell you about team power? It tells you that teams don't have power. Teams can't convert those views to sponsorships. You know who converts those views to sponsorships? The players, because the players have the power in this dynamic. The fans that you're talking about, they care about the players. They don't give a shit about a nameless brand that happens to have a certain color scheme on their logo. They care about the players whose stream they watch, and that is how you generate fandom. Until teams learn how to actually generate fandom, generate attachment, generate conversion clicks from their audience to sponsors, this doesn't matter. This conversation's
absolutely. No, I was just going to say Harris is spot on, and again, to go back to the E-League example, that's exactly what we found out with the Brazilian issue. It was the Team Luminosity signed a deal with the league, then SK Gaming wanted to use the Brazilian players, and they signed a deal with them, and the assumption was SK Gaming would get the slot and we would just play out. We had to essentially remove an unbelievably popular team from the league, saying that by, Luminosity have the right to sorry, it was the other way around, actually, my bad. The SK Gaming team has to field whatever players they want, and then that's just how that goes. And so it was in that moment, we were really seeing, when it comes to viewership, players have all the power. Like if if Faker wasn't at T1, how much of a hit would he be? That's an unquantifiable number, but it's an insane number, I would wager. And it's that way across the board because people that run these orgs, they essentially leverage the players to bring in their fans, and then what do you do to capture
They're
them?
glorified talent.
Yeah, absolutely. Walking billboards, I used to call them as well. I mean, essentially, that's how players were treated for a long period in esports, and there wasn't any synergies created. So, if I sign popular player, if I sign the Cristiano Ronaldo of the game, I get all of Cristiano Ronaldo's fans. But what happens when Ronaldo leaves? And he will leave. So, he's not with me for life. This is transactional. So we've seen it happen just a ton of times. People don't support orgs; they support players they like. Sorry, Duncan.
Well, Los Ratones already has Cristiano Ronaldo. They have Reckless.
Yes, Reckless.
There's another thing. Yeah. We're acting like it's just a team. No. They have the player where, if people don't know, the year Reckless played in Korea in the Challenger League, essentially the Academy League type scenario of Korean League of Legends, on Wikipedia, which admittedly maybe isn't the number one wiki, obviously Gamepedia probably is still number one, but at the end of the year, they did their number, they do it in Counter-Strike as well, like the most searched players. Reckless was number 2 behind Faker and ahead of all the other world champions in T1. And no Western player was even in the top 6. That was all. It was all of T1's world championship winning roster, and then Reckless, and Reckless was number 2 on the list ahead of everyone not called Faker. So one, I'd love to even know what happens to Los Ratones if Reckless leaves. Insert anyone else you like. There is no other player with that level of fan pull. I can tell you, Ocelot just straight up told me the reason I had to bring Reckless to G2 is because the motherfucker had a Gucci deal coming with him, mate. This is a level of stratosphere we're not even in as G2, mate. Yeah. We don't have that deal coming. Or Louis Vuitton or whatever one. I think it was Gucci. So anyway, here's the angle in which there is one team I'm aware of in Western League of Legends that has created fan culture, and it doesn't matter who plays for them. And they are the ultimate reason why fuck every idiot Los Ratones fan watching this episode who still thinks they're right, because they're called Karmine Corp.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who plays for Karmine Corp.
Correct.
Calist, right, is a mega French player. It wouldn't matter if he left tomorrow. Karmine Corp, even when they had the shit lineup at the beginning, had insane viewership, higher than Los Ratones right now. Karmine Corp, last year as a champion, had insane viewership. Right, here's what people won't get. Listen to this story and you'll realize Karmine Corp were a better business partner and hit every metric Los Ratones is claimed to meet. And they were told, sorry, you have to go and sell your company and come in through the hard way. But now we have to give it to Los Ratones. So think about this, right? Karmine Corp is essentially driven by a giant streaming figure called Kometo. He's your Cadril. People would watch no matter what, because Cadril's there or Kometo's there, right? He even has, by the way, the whole French angle. He even has a nationalistic element attached. So famously, when his team joined the org, there was actually another French language speaking team called BDS. It was a much better team in the game. It didn't matter. They had fuck all fans. Every French fan was a fan of Karmine Corp, largely a fan of Kometo. Then you have this angle where they've got giant amounts of fans. If people don't know, before they even set foot in the LEC, they were doing insane events where the joke is T1 and G2 wanted to attend their homestand off-season exhibition tournament. And famously, they actually did the Cristiano Ronaldo signs with Real Madrid stunt of when they signed players, they would fill 20,000 people in a stadium, not even to watch a game, to watch the player come out and be announced joining. Right? That was mind-blowing when that happened with fucking Real Madrid in football. This was done in a team that at the time wasn't even in LEC, the major region. And then lastly, what happened when they had this? So I can tell you, I've got a giant fan base, I've got a nationalized fan base, and I have got guaranteed viewership for the league. Can I join LEC? Fuck no, you can't. You can buy into the LEC. So here's what Kometo had to do. He went and he bought Astralis' spot. Initially, he bought something like 66% at about 15 million euros was the number. And supposedly last year, that was even restructured. So now he has 51% of the slot. Probably they got some money back or something like that. And then Astralis has 49%. Right? After all of that, You get Cagel, who essentially is actually a poor man's Kometo and Kami Corp, where he doesn't even have the established record that if he loses these players, he'll have the same viewership. We don't even know if he'll abandon the streak. And he's just told, actually, because your viewership, which is literally lower than Kami Corp's was, because your viewership's popping now, because you're the novel one that we'll all be loving, we have to just abandon all the business concerns and all those things we just... And in fact, you know, Kometo, I've just been Men in Black, mate. That never happened. All that shit with you 2 years ago never happened, mate. I have to let this guy in for that. Why do you think Kometo was the number one person coming out publicly against this? Why do you think he's the guy I would suspect leaked it all, mate? Like, it's obvious why he has it's not even being a dick. He has a very, 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 the joke is that is the only topic ever where me and him seem to be 100% in alignment. Like, I think he's actually completely right and justified. I think it's a fucking joke.
No, I mean, yeah.
The nationalized audience, by the way, is the thing that matters, I think, the most. People are tribalistic. People are just basically tribalistic. You don't get rid of thousands of years of evolution. You know, the nationalized audience is a thing. People care about a French team. And that's just something that we've kind of lost.
It also helps
every time they try
selling
regionality, you see, regionality really has like flopped in esports consistently because, you know,
I don't know if I agree with that.
In mainstream sports, you know, where you're born, it will largely dictate your parents will say to you, you have to support this team because it's where we're from. You know, we're Bostonians. So we're fucking Celtics fans, you know, we support New England or whatever the fuck. Same where I grew up. You had a limited choice. You know, you were Sunderland, you were Newcastle, few Middlesbrough people. That was about it. You picked one of those teams. If I'd come out and gone, well, Liverpool are good, I'm a Liverpool fan, all my family would have filled me in. They would have kicked the shit out of me. You know what I mean? So, like, what you doing? You know, you pick a jersey and that's how it goes. Unfortunately, there's nothing that anchors you to a region in esports because we exist in digital spaces, and that's why it's failed. However, I will agree. Nationalism, particularly in countries where nationalism isn't frowned upon, like, you know, for instance, if I'm British and I get nationalistic, I'm a bad guy, right? If I can't even put it right. But if I'm from Brazil and I'm not nationalistic, I'm a bad guy. Like, well, you love gringos? What's wrong with you, right? Like, so
it's literally built into our biology.
Yeah. There's some crazy rules around it. By the way, I'm only talking for sports. You know, obviously, I'm not saying nationalism can't have bad consequences. I have studied history, just a little bit, just enough. But I will say, like, yeah, in esports, every time we see a nationalistic fan base, they're loyal to the fucking org. They're loyal to the brand. They're not loyal to the players. Meanwhile, Overwatch, when they tried to
That's
do
a good thing, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Here's London Spitfire, 5 Koreans. Enjoy. Figure that one out. It's silly that we keep getting these things wrong.
All I was going to say is, and Monte, I just want to say something really quickly. When I look at what I consider to be really peak esports for me, it's Melee, East Coast versus West Coast. It's the SoCal region versus the Tri-State region in Melee. When I watch World of Warcraft teams, I'm a huge WoW fan. It's always Team Liquid representing North America versus Europeans. Either it's Method or Echo, right? Like those are there is that nationality kind of element. Even back in the day when you were to look at, by the way, this is really interesting. I was looking at some of the highest Overwatch viewed games recently. I don't know why I was doing this, but you would be surprised to see that the 2018 World Cup actually was amongst some of the highest viewership. And so 2018 or 19, I can't remember which one, but amongst some of the highest viewership, nationalized teams playing against other national teams
It was
that had fan bases. Yeah.
We're doing that in CS. We're gonna give that a run back. The Saudis have essentially decided we're going to do
that's another episode
Cup.
For sure.
Yeah,
the Esports Nations Cup.
That's an absolute clusterfuck waiting to happen right now because they're giving out VRS points for it. For even though it's not teams that would qualify for the points, it's the core. So, for instance, if Team Spirit, let's say, send 3 Russians, or the Russians, it looks like, aren't going to be allowed to compete, whatever, in teams, they have to do it. They can only do it in the 1v1 thing. But let's just say, hypothetically, you sent 3 from your team. Then why would I, as the, say, Falcons, a team with 2 other good Russians, why would I send my 2 Russians to play with you and help you win VRS points? I'm your rival. at the club level. So
it's also scheduled super janky, like 10 days before the major, isn't it?
No, it's just an exercise in decadence and how much money do you want to make and how much fucking Saudi dick do you want to suck.
All right, that's another episode. I do want to wrap up now.
Yeah, we should wrap up. It's been a long one.
So yeah, but I want to get Harris's final take on this. Like, we've walked through the franchising and why this basically had to happen, guys, and how it is so expensive / difficult / impossible to unwind it now. So what's your take on this? Like, what's your final take on this Los Ratones, dissolve we bring back relegation, dissolve the franchising? Like,
I don't think you're not going to, I mean, listen, I don't think that a lot of the teams would be happy with that. I think that there's a lot of ways to play ball. Like, I mean, I think that maybe there's some hybrid stuff we could do if that people want to spend money, or if Riot's willing to spend money. In particular, if Riot is willing to spend money. But I don't know that it's going to happen. I think that I'm more worried about this being a flash in the pan. I think that it's very unlikely. I don't know that they could repeat this, and certainly that would be my big concern, to do a giant restructure around something that happened to be good for a couple weeks. So we'll see. I'm not. I think that LEC is strong right now anyway. So I think that I think that it's. I don't know that it's such a warranted conversation or a giant restructure.
Also, to
accommodate this.
To be fair to Riot, by even creating this system where LEC, these teams could compete with LEC for a limited amount of time, creates hype for the start of the year every year, and in a way, you actually capture the hype in the limited flash in the pan version that could exist, which seems like it's actually a very good idea from LEC's perspective.
I agree. 100%. 100%. Yeah. All right.
Any other final thoughts, gentlemen?
I mean, look, just to put my little flag in it, it's like the whole thing's preposterous, even as a suggestion. Like, you can't, right? The whole point of franchising was to create an environment where teams couldn't get relegated, to ensure a steady stream of investment money. And in the moment you agree to that, you agree that the slots have an intrinsic value, a value we are willing to buy. Once you have bought something, it is an asset in a portfolio that then has a resale value. And you can't just say, right, well, guys, vibes are back, so fuck all of your $20 million investments, because vibes. Like, it's the dumbest argument. I was against franchising. I kind of saw the writing on the wall. I was initially for it. One of my greatest regrets has been I was anti, saw everything else we tried in esports fail, was like, fuck it, shall we give this franchise? Maybe it is better. Maybe the NFL and the NBA, maybe they aren't something, right? Let's try that. Watch that kind of fail, right? And then it's like, we've gone back to a pseudo open circuit in Counter-Strike where we're pretending it's an open circuit, but people are being paid franchise money.
Maybe the basic issue is that you can mix all the seats on the Titanic around as many times as you want to do that, but until you find an actual profitable way to run a business, it doesn't matter.
Until you learn how to fucking miss an iceberg, yeah. Yeah, there ain't no point in fucking getting out on the Titanic.
Doesn't matter.
For real.
Make the business run. Make it work. Make people spend money.
And that has been the problem with esports. It doesn't matter what flavor of business we run, whether it's franchise or contracts or Wild West or laissez-faire, or like, it doesn't matter what we do. It has always consistently failed, and it has usually failed for the twin fucking serpents of greed and incompetence. It's like, guys, if we let people who know what they're doing make the decisions, and we stopped greedy assholes selling us down the river when right decisions were being made, we'd be fine. We have been there. We have been on the precipice of it being a successful business. I was there. I saw it. I felt it. I felt the change. I went to bed one day, wow, esports is really unstable and bad. I woke up the next day, holy shit, we've done it. And it was a very palpable feeling if you were there at that time. You can't just walk back bad decisions because they're bad when they have a cost to the people that bought into the idea. They weren't bad decisions. They paid $20 million on the basis this is going to be good. The existence of Los Ratones, by the way, in no way proves that franchising was the worst direction to go. and that we should get rid of it. Los Ratones is like, it's a flash in the pan. It's a combination of factors that will not be replicatable inside of a year, 2 years max.
Even by Los Ratones, critically.
Yes. Yeah.
Like,
that's but not by anyone.
Because as Thorin pointed out, you lose Reckless. Okay, well, you don't have that anymore. Also, they're reliant on, Baus being there, who's a massive streamer in his own right. And eventually you're just going to run out of massive streamers to convince to join your team.
I think Thorin's point is broader than that. His point is, well, okay, what are we just going to have? Consistent hype around more and more people coming into the league? Oh, there's a new team coming into the league. Oh, but there's a new team coming into the league. Oh, but there's a new team coming into the league, right? Like, when does that
It's
stop?
like that Simpsons scene with the sheep, right? Where it's like, and they push it out the way and something cuter comes along. That's another thing we didn't even get into. What if somebody is just more popular than Los Ratones?
Well, here's another thing that people never bother to point out. Los Ratones, it wouldn't even be a viable case study. They're such an insane outlier. You got people like Reckless, Nemesis, Faust to play for free for your organization. By the way, you do know, if they're willing to play for free, I can GM the fuck out of a Fnatic lineup. We'll have a loads of viewership. No other team has that fucking option. That's fucking absurd. And guess why no team has that option? Because these players cost money when they play in these leagues normally. And I have all my own costs to run with, etc. I would just say, the only thing I have to say at the end of this episode is this. Luckily, this is one of the reasons why this show in itself is sustaining, because I know this episode will have like 20k plus viewers, and 99% of them will never comment on it. They'll just watch it and they'll understand some of the things that were said and they'll go, brilliant, I'm actually a bit more informed. The comment section will be an absolute fucking travesty. The comment section will be full of cognitive dissonance, but it's not Cagel's fault. Well, so what? Maybe Kometo shouldn't have won. Just get sponsorship. There's all the viewership. Or there'll just be people saying you're just always negative. You're just farming drama for all this thing. And it'll just be the usual fucking brain rot. So luckily, I will trust that the silent masses in this case did get some of the things we said. And they came away a little bit more enlightened, maybe. Because as I say, I actually think these topics, guess what? There's a reason why there's entire fields called things like economics, the law, etc., that no one person can even be an expert on. So the idea that a guy who was a shit leaker, who just got to be the de facto most popular journalist in League, largely, as we pointed out earlier, by not doing journalism, the idea he's just going to go, I'm getting feelings, so fuck it. I guess now I also know everything about economics too. Seems like a very, very implausible scenario to me.
Well, also, and this is just straight up true, this podcast is the #1 source of business discussion in esports in the English language, period. That's it.
When we buy an LEC slot, then.
I don't know if you guys remember this, and I gotta get going.
Yeah, we're going.
Yeah, sorry, bro.
No, but I don't know if you remember this, but we did Thorin and Monte. We did an episode on the walkout at one point. That was right after Philip went and spoke with you guys. That was like 95k viewers.
Oh no,
there.
He says
so
20K.
That was a really good one.
No. He says 20K. He does not. This show does way more than that.
Yeah.
And for all you guys, well, what about the YouTube numbers? You guys realize we're on a bunch of different platforms. Idiots.
Oh, I was just talking about YouTube. I didn't even look at the other numbers. I'm sure. I don't know.
This show's fine. People in the industry pay attention to the show. I get messages all the time about this
me
show.
too.
Yeah, people.
I come on this show with you guys. I get a message. So,
I even saw a comment in the last one saying it's not the same without Richard. And I listen,
of course,
I've just been hungover as shit, sipping beers and telling non sequitur stories this episode. So
this is fun.
All right. Well, thank you guys.
No.
Thanks
Great job,
Harris, for joining
Thanks
us
for being
again.
here.
Thank you.
We always appreciate you and your perspective as a guest. We're going to take a look at some of that 2XKO stuff, guys, for the next episode. So we'll see you in a few weeks. Until then, as usual, esports delenda est. See you next time.
Take care, guys.